And we're in. How you doing today, Michael? Let me just get this a little bit closer.
Okay.
It's on a little bit of a swivel, so there you go.
Go.
Perfect. So you started off by telling me when we met just 2 seconds ago that you've been a longtime LA resident, and this neighborhood has changed a lot.
Oh yeah, off and on. I've lived in LA. I think the first time I moved here, I was 14 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
My folks separated, and I lived over my mom over on Melrose and Van Ness, which is the corner of Paramount.
Right. Yeah.
Which
Okay.
is really cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to be there because I started out as an actor at 8
Mm-hmm.
in San Diego. And I was kind of an entertainer, a comedian, sang, did stuff like that. And so when my folks divorced, I had to come with my mom. So I spent a year and a half here. I went from the east side of San Diego, which was pretty suburban. It was rural. We had avocado trees and lemon trees, groves all around. I lived on a little mountain called Mount Helix.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd gone to high school, and when my folks split, I came up here. When I was in high school at Grossmont,
Okay.
there were probably 10 Jews. When I got to Fairfax, it was probably 85%.
Just a bit of a difference. Yeah.
I realized that Jews come in all colors,
Mm-hmm.
not just high performing because there's only a few of us and you have to look good, blah, 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 blah. It was a real eye-opener. But then I lived over there for a year and a half, and I moved back to San Diego, and when I went away, and I went to college. My dad, I'd won scholarships to go to Pasadena Playhouse School of Acting.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was great. And I'd won a Best Actor award in a one-act play contest there, and they offered me a scholarship. My dad was not interested in it.
Oh, really? He wasn't interested in a life in the arts?
Ever. And I'd been doing it, I'd stopped for a bit, but when I got back to high school there, it was like perfect. And I did, these plays and stuff. And so he wanted me to go in the reserves. I was 17. I was barely 17.
But a life in the military versus a life in the arts?
He wanted me to be a man.
Oh, that's always dangerous.
And so I took the physical, and I failed
Mm-hmm.
because I had had asthma as a child. And I told them that pretty much honestly and on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we don't want you. So this was 1961.
Oh, wow. You dodged a bullet.
Yeah,
Literally.
twice. Yeah. So I flunked that. So we negotiated, and I went to college. I went to Arizona State. So when I got to ASU, I'd never been there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got off the plane in Phoenix in September, this heat hit me.
It's like opening up an oven, right? When you come out of that airport.
No, it was coming out of the airplane because we didn't have tunnels.
Oh, right.
We didn't have things.
Yeah.
We got out. It was old Bonanza Airline.
Walked onto the tarmac and just was hit.
Yeah, just on the stairs. I just went, am I in for it?
Yeah.
So
You can't, no one really understands. Like, people just think like the southern U.S. is the southern U.S., but the difference between San Diego and Phoenix is night and day.
eons. Yeah, galaxies.
Yeah.
No beach.
Mm-hmm.
There is beach, but without the water.
Well, they have like lakes with like little beaches. Yeah.
Now they do.
Yeah.
So it was quite a shock, and I spent my freshman year there. And then I figured out a way to get my acting fix. And so I auditioned. I tried out for head cheerleader, and I made that my sophomore year. So I became head cheerleader. It was pretty great because you have an audience of 3,000 people, más o menos, And if you get them to laugh and maybe have a drink or two, they will say or do pretty much anything you're asked to do. So that was a ball.
So you failed the physical to be in the military, but you were fit enough to be head cheerleader at Arizona State.
Yes.
Which is a very physical activity.
You know, it's interesting. In those days, I had a mic on a stand, so I would kind of narrate, kind of lead the cheers, talk to people, and stuff like that. I would jump around some.
Oh, it's more like an MC.
Much more like an MC. But we also did physical stuff. You know, we did whatever. We didn't do the gymnastics.
Oh, that's my mistake. Yeah.
Because
just not you?
Nah, it wouldn't be my deal. I mean, I just wasn't built for it. And so that was great. And so what was funny is that I got a little backlash from the faculty and the alumni who sit on the other side of that stadium, because I would lead what they came to call questionable cheers.
Oh, really? You were taking things into your own hands a little too much?
Doing nothing like what they were doing at Cal, what they were doing at UCLA. I was doing nothing like that. But it was the Valley of the Sun and the home of Barry Goldwater, who was, if people remember that far back, a presidential candidate for the conservative side. So they warned me. And so my last game, I let it all out, and so they kicked me out. So it was at Thanksgiving break. So I went home, and
they kicked you out of school, or they just stopped you from being the cheerleader?
Stopped me from being head cheerleader. So so a bunch of people got together and had a what they called in those days a demonstration.
Very uncommon in the 1960s.
It was, I mean, for ASU, it was a big deal. And they marched to the president's office and blah, 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 you know. And they got me reinstated.
Oh, wow. Power to the people.
Yeah. So then I did basketball. We were a 9th ranked or 10th ranked, you know, a high ranked college football team. Football was big there. And we had guys who made the pros, quite a few. Some who made all-stars. And so then the next year I came back. So that was my sophomore year. My junior year, I came back to do it again. And I did it very clean. I used to have so much fun, and they would laugh, and people would, you know, the ball. And so then I did that sophomore year and then I came back for my junior year, and I started taking an acting class there, and I was not pleased with any of it.
So just the quality of the program wasn't great?
It just didn't make sense to me. You know, I won't go into the details because this just would be mean. But so I did that season, the football season, and then the last game, everybody was waiting for those cheers. There were only two really questionable cheers. One was smother the mother. So when you're on defense and the guy got the ball, you want to smother the mother.
Fair enough. Yeah, that sounds fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other one was when you got a penalty, and I would say, elevator, elevator, we got the shaft.
Fair enough.
They hated it.
Really?
They hated it. They kicked me out, and I left, and I came to Holly.
For that, let's go back a sec, though, because you said you were a child actor since the age of 8. So what did your parents get you into when you were your mom?
Stage mom.
Okay.
My dad was like, it's interesting. My mom was a really interesting woman. She pretty much believed everything she said, whether it was true or not. So when she met my dad, who was older and had a family previously, she told him she couldn't have kids. So when my sister came along, that was a surprise. And then I came along, that was a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom was a stage mom, and she pushed me, and because I was cute and could do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a wonderful theater in downtown in Balboa Park called the Old Globe, which is now a well-known, established, large, theater. It's equity. It's a regular deal. But then it was a quality community theater, and I did a play where I was a little fairy, and I got up and I was in the balcony, and I said, and the guy said something, and I said, "I'll fly right down there and get you," or something like that. And it bit me. So I did junior theater there. There's Navy and Marine bases in San Diego.
Right, I know
right?
that, yeah.
So then it was, they did a lot of USO shows. So I would do comedy, I would sing, I'd do imitations, and I'd do the shows there. And then I'd doing talent shows. And I was very fortunate. I won pretty much every show I was in because I was cute and precocious. And the Marines loved it. The Navy loved it. And so I did that. I auditioned for the Mouseketeer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I made the last cut, but not the final.
Well, that's pretty close, though, right?
It was funny. And so then I kind of let it go for a while. And then when I got back into, I was in the marching band in high school. I played the trumpet. The line went like in the photograph, the line goes like this. It goes, them, me, them.
So you're a little shorter than the rest of the folks?
Oh, yeah. I was 4'10" or something like that, and I weighed 105 pounds.
Was the Mouseketeers back in the day the same kind of path to stardom that it was like 20 years ago when Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling came through?
Yeah.
Britney Spears?
Oh, yeah. You never heard of Annette Funicello?
No, I never heard of Annette Funicello.
Come on. There were big stars came out of there.
Okay.
Right. And
So it's always been an engine for...
Right. It was on TV all the time, did all that. So when I got back, I started acting again. I didn't act for a while or do anything because then my folks divorced and all that. But when I got back to San Diego to live with my dad, I was sprung. I had a year and a half with my mom. I got sprung and went back with my dad, who tolerated me, but he allowed me to act.
Well, that's a change.
Yeah. And so that's how that happened. He wanted me to be a lawyer, a businessman.
Boring shit.
That's, my dad came from the old country. He was a self-made man.
Yeah, it's interesting how I find it interesting. Like, I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast who have come to LA almost in a kind of rebellion of what their parents wanted them to do, and it's interesting because I feel like if you're a parent, and I don't have children, but if you're a parent, you kind of want to see your kids go through life and cost you as little as possible. That's the general vibe I get. Like,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two men, sons, and I think, the cost, there's always a cost. So, but there's also a payback. So you want the cost to equal or better, the payback to be better than the cost.
Yeah. But I love the way, like, so many parents push us into like staple jobs, so that we can get out on our own
I understand.
And start doing that instead of being like 30 with no job, being a waiter, getting 1 gig a year or something like that, which is the reality of most people who live here. Like, it's hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. My older brother and sister were very evolved. They had a different mom, but they were my bulwark. They saved me pretty much from both my parents. So when my father died about that time, there was an educational trust, and they both believed that my education could be completed as an actor. So I came to Hollywood after that end of the season. The boys' dean said, "No, you're making a mistake." And I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I just wanted to say goodbye.
Yeah.
So I came here and I studied acting with a gentleman named Jeff Corey, who was a wonderful teacher. I studied singing and dance. I lived at my sister's for a while. Then I got out and lived with a roommate out in Studio City. And then I was in my acting class and I studied dance. So then I was in my acting class, and a wonderful guy, Alan Hunt, was in my class. And he said, I'm going on a commercial audition today. And I said, God, I've never done one of those. He said, come on. I said, really? He said, yeah, just sign in, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't know anything. And it was for a Crest toothpaste commercial. And in those days, Crest really advertised, and they had a campaign where the previous year, a girlfriend of mine had done one, and she made a lot of dough. So, so I went along, and it was. They asked me, "Can you throw horseshoes?" I said, "Well, you're supposed to, do this." They said, "Sure." They said, "How well?" I said, "I was the intramural champ at Arizona State."
Is that even a real thing?
Intramurals?
No, but horseshoe intramurals.
It may have been. It may have been, but it was good enough, right? So, so I get in there and they just kind of look at you and stuff, and you kind of fake throwing the horseshoe and having a great time. And so I knew nothing. So when I got out, I started calling the casting director. I said, how did I do? Do they want me back? I did. I mean, I had no idea you're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And so they called me back, and they had us in a room with 10 guys. My friend Alan, they got him on the track and field part, and they asked him if he could do the high jump, I think, which was the over the bar.
Right, high jump. Not pole vault where you use the...
No, high jump. And he said, yeah. And they said, how high? And he goes, 6.5 feet. And they go...
For the Olympic record?
They meant broad jump.
Oh, okay.
He thought they said broad jump, which is, So they went, He didn't get the gig. So I got a call back. And we're standing in a line, maybe 8-10 guys. And there's this good-looking blonde guy right next to me. And they come to me, come to this guy, how many, would talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And how many ringers can you get out of 10? Guy goes, oh, 6 or 7. I go, I can do 7, I think, yeah. And the guy next to me, they go to him, and how many ringers do you think you can do? And he goes, 10. And I looked up at him, and he went, gosh. And so it turned out that the campaign was, back at school, I couldn't do anything. My buddy always beat me, so it shows me playing horseshoes and him beating me. But in the toothpaste test, I won. And so that turned into a commercial where I made an extraordinary amount of money.
Fantastic.
It was unbelievable. I mean, the first check was I was stunned. Mm-hmm. I'd moved out. I was living with a roommate from class, and I went out and bought an MGB.
First paycheck, bang.
And so it was great. And then because I had taken dance classes, I did a country western TV show. A friend of mine who I'd met in dance class got cast me on this show to be a ding diddly ding. And so I started meeting these other dancers. And then Dick Clark was auditioning dancers for a rock and roll daytime TV show. It was called Where the Action Is. So I auditioned. I was fortunate. I got a call back. And then I got the gig. And I was Mike Williams by that time. I mean, I had always been Mike Williams because to be Michael Schwartz in San Diego as an actor, my mom didn't, they kind of went, let's keep it, neutral.
So Michael Williams was easier?
Mike,
Mike Williams.
my middle name.
Okay.
So I was Action Kid Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be an amazing.
The Dick Clark production.
It was called Where the Action Is.
Mm.
Dick Clark presents Where the Action Is. Now, he had a show called American Bandstand.
I heard of that one,
It
yeah.
was on forever. It was daytime as well. He started in Philly, and then he came out here. And it was kids dancing in the studio, and they'd have a guest or two. But this was 5 days a week, but we had guests. We had a resident cast of singers. The first ones were Linda Scott, Steve Alamo, Paul Revere and the Raiders. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they became huge. And Tommy Rowe, and there were just and the Action Kids, and we had a ball. We had an unbelievable time. We only shot on location, so we shot all over Southern California. And if you ask people of the age that have seen the show, they would say, "Oh, you shot on the beach, right?" Because obviously we shot on the beach quite often. But we shot at, what used to be Pacific Ocean Park, and we shot down at San Pedro on the pier there, down there. We shot all over L.A. We shot up in Big Bear. We shot, pretty much all over. We did 3 tours.
Mm-hmm.
The first tour was with, the lead was Gary Lewis and the Playboys. Some of you people may know who that is. He had a bunch of big hits. We became good friends. And it was Paul Revere and the Raiders, who also had hits. And we toured the South, and that was just absolutely unbelievable and wild.
Let's go back a sec. So you come out of ASU.
Yeah.
And you land the toothpaste commercial. How old are you then?
A year and a half.
Okay. So it was like 22?
No. I was like 19 and change.
Oh, wow.
19 and a half, maybe. Yeah, because I was 17 when I got to college. Turned 18, 19. So it was about maybe 19 and a half, close to 20.
And after the toothpaste commercial, and you started to see that you could make some money doing this, clearly your path was set in your mind.
Yeah, it was fabulous. And I had to stop my acting class, but I was, in showbiz, so that was, fabulous. One of the actresses and one of the dancers and I, we did a Hunt's commercial that paid pretty well, Hunt's ketchup. And I did some others over,
It's amazing how much.
I did a good year.
Oh, for the tires?
Yeah.
It's amazing how much money commercials used to pay when there were only like 3 channels and 30 million viewers a night, right?
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I bought a house in Laurel Canyon when I was 21 in 1965.
Just from your earnings?
From earnings, also being on the show,
mm-hmm.
on Where the Action Is. And think about that, 1965. I'm sure you've seen some of the documentaries and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was better than those documentaries. Those documentaries.
The Laurel Canyon scene?
It was just better than you have any imagination. I mean, they showed the Byrds, David Crosby. They show, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They show those guys and Joni Mitchell and all that stuff. But there was much more.
Doesn't Gene Wilder have a crazy home up there that he built?
It wasn't when I was
okay.
That I know of. But so because of the show, I got to know all these rock and rollers, man. All the greats did the show. All the acts did the show, from James Brown and the Motown people to everybody British. There were only 3 acts that of note that I can recall that didn't do the show. Was Elvis, he didn't do the show. The Beatles didn't do the show. Dylan didn't do the show. But the Stones did the show, and the Kinks did the show,
mm-hmm.
and the Temptations did. I don't know if you know these names.
I know all these names. Yeah, I mean, the music, the '60s was amazing.
And then all the people in between
mm-hmm.
did the show. I mean, there were big names, but all these people, and I just had a great relationship with a lot of the performers. So I would go when they were performing at the Whiskey. So I'd go see upstairs, I'd go sit up and say, how you doing? What's going on? And then I'd come down and watch them perform. Pretty much it got to be where I could go to the Whiskey in the front door and they'd say, come on in, because they wanted me there. Because I would dance on the stage and stuff like that. And that was just a remarkable experience.
Yeah. Can you imagine having that kind of access today to like these stars and these singers and these, because you feel like today they're quite isolated, but then you watch these documentaries and it's like Elton John is just sitting at the bar at the Troubadour having a drink with some people before he goes on stage.
That's a show I missed.
Oh, the Elton?
I'm really bummed. I don't know if I knew about it, but if I did know about it, I'm bummed. The other show I knew about that I didn't see up at the Rainbow Room was Bob Marley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I blew it. But I saw everybody else, They didn't do the bowl then. They did,
The Whiskey, the Viper, the Troubadour.
Yeah.
All the stone's throw from here.
Yeah, Viper came later. But the Troubadour, the Trip, the Red Velvet, and it was just great,
It's so funny. Like people always think of Hollywood or Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, whatever. They think of it as movies, but actually the musical history here is so rich, and the talent that got recognized at the bars and the nightclubs that are a stone throw away from this studio is spectacular. Like the history here is incredible.
Yeah. And they all played. I mean, everybody played. So when I had moved down to West Hollywood. I said I'd been in this area. So I moved into West Hollywood when I was like 20, and I lived on Palm, which is now down east of here. And I know what that is.
Is that you? You got to take that?
It's a drug. I'm supposed to. Medication.
Do you want to do it live on the
air? No, it's in my car. So I could. No, just kidding.
Do we need to stop or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
We've had a lot of people drinking on this show, but not we haven't said someone injected any drugs.
Yeah. These are called medications. And so I lived on Palm, which was between Holloway and Santa Monica, just where Holloway comes in to the Sunset Strip. It was 3 blocks from the Whiskey.
Yeah.
And so, but I would drive anyway.
Of course.
I'm from California. And
no one walks in this town.
No. And so it was just great. So I got to know a lot of people. I got to be really good friends with James Brown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so James Brown liked me because I was a little white Jew that could dance like him. I got the rhythm and I got the steps, and it was really, really fun. So one day I said, James, why don't you record me, cut a record? He goes, send me a demo. So I go, okay. So one of the lead stars of the show, Stephen Lamos, said, let's go into the studio. I have some tracks. We can find one and then we'll do it, So we cut it, and it was very generous of Steve to do that. But we were all family. And so we sent it to James, and James said, yeah, come on out. So he flew me to New York. It was maybe only the second time I'd been to New York. So it was like, and I stayed in a big hotel on 6th. And, but this is how small it is. I was in the hotel and I didn't know what to do. So I went down into the magazine shop, and it had a window on the sidewalk. And I'm looking around and I hear tick, 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 tick on the window. And it's 3 guys from the Temptations.
Who also know you.
Yeah. It was Eddie Kendricks and Otis and Melvin. So they said, come on out. I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm here to cut a record for James. And they go, yeah, cool. So I cut that record, sold about 9 copies, I think. Actually, it made the number 99 on one of the charts, thanks to James' power.
And you were singing on this record.
I sang.
Yeah. Did you have a band as well?
No, I just sang.
Yeah.
It was written by a guy named Nat Jones, who had written a couple of James' big hits, Out of Sight, or maybe Papa's Got a Brand, whatever. Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. one was called Something You Didn't Done, and the other was You Don't Want Me Around. So I got to, I recorded those, and then on our third tour, I also went on American Bandstand and performed it because it was smart of Dick to bring me on, and blah, blah, blah. And I did it on our show, and then we toured, and I sang it around the country. I did my song. I also got to do a duet with one of the other dancers, Leslie Evans, wonderful, talented woman. And we did Mickey's Monkey, and we did my song. And that was just, it was a dream.
So you were going out and singing around the country, like on yourself, like headlining, or
on tour with Where the Action Is. We did 3 national tours.
Oh wow, okay. So you got to. So you were hired as a dancer to do that, and then eventually you also started performing on the show.
Yeah. Well, I always performed on the show. I did comedy.
Okay.
I would lip sync songs. Back then, everything was lip sync. Nothing was live.
Oh really?
Yeah. So all the acts would come on, and they'd lip sync their hits, and they were good at it. So, and so I would do stuff, a lot of the novelty records I would lip sync, and, I just saw a still of me. I've got a Jimmy Durante nose, and I'm doing something. I don't know. It was terrific. So then we did this tour, and I got to sing my song in front of thousands of people. And then so then I was off the show, and show ended, and I said it was 1960, and I went to Monterey Pop. You know what that is?
I do not know Monterey Pop.
Do you folks? Monterey Pop was the first big rock concert. Look, where you go to it,
like before Woodstock.
Just before Woodstock. It was kind of a beginning for Woodstock.
Yeah, a trial run.
A trial run, better than a trial run. So it was put together by the Mamas and Papas and Lou Adler. They got together 3 days of unbelievable rock and roll. So I took my girlfriend at the time, Terry Garr, who was a wonderful dancer and became a fabulous actress. And we went up, and I had gotten backstage pass from Derek Taylor, I think his name was, who was the publicist for the Beatles. And he said, "Here, take these backstage passes." So I said, "Cool," So we went back. Now, Terry had danced on a show called Shindig, there were 3 major rock and roll shows on TV at that time. There was Hullabaloo, which was shot in New York, and there was Shindig, which was shot here, and then ours was a national daytime show. And there were other daytime shows, but those were the 3 network shows. And so she knew some of the people as well. So we had a great time there, and it was, everybody, it was just fantastic. It was the first time anybody saw, well, Otis was there, who I knew from the show, and we were for Otis Redding. We were pals and stuff. But this guy named Jimi Hendrix was going to be on.
That little guy that no one's ever heard of?
No one had really known him in this country. And The Who was on the same show, and they refused to go on after him. Nobody knew why. So they did just an amazing show, where they knocked the amps over and just wreak havoc. And then Jimmy came out, and everybody went jaw drop.
I wouldn't want to follow Jimi Hendrix.
It was jaw drop. It was unbelievable. Everybody just went out of their mind. That was, I think, that's where he set fire to his guitar, because everybody else had smashed him.
He had to do something different.
Yeah, he did.
I remember seeing video of Jimmy's Woodstock performance, which was obviously legendary, but I didn't hear of this Monterey.
The first one, Monterey Pop.
Monterey Pop. So it was in Monterey, California then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was outside. It was a ton of groups and a ton of San Francisco acts, which were big, and the Mamas and Pops, everybody was on that label, and you name it. I can't even remember who was there. So that was that era.
It's like the beginning of the festival era.
It was the beginning of the festival era.
Yeah.
I think it all started with a show called the Tammy Show, which was done Kinescope. You ever hear of Kinescope?
I know Kinescope, yeah.
Right. So it was all done on Kinescope. It was shot at the Santa Monica Auditorium. I did not know about the show. I did not audition as a dancer. I don't think I was good enough for that show, but it was fantastic. James, the Stones, Jerry and the Pacemakers, an English group, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, the Supremes, all these fantastic Beach Boys, fantastic groups, Jan and Dee. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And they played it in theater, and I went, and that's where Mick learned that step that he picked up from James Brown, where he stood on one leg and kind of, you don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Like where he stands on one leg and does the shuffle.
Yeah, he picked that from James.
Because I saw the Rolling Stones live in Shanghai, China, actually. I lived in China for 18 years. And they came and did their first show in China in like 2006 or 8 or something like that. And I was like right there because I was with the press corps. I was working for the New York Times back then. Yeah. I love the Rolling Stones.
That's so much. Yeah. I saw them. They did our show, but I also saw them live at the Palladium on Sunset Boulevard. That was a good show to see.
I saw Clapton in Shanghai. He came and just killed it. I mean, it was really quite special. Clapton's amazing. Yeah.
It's interesting. So these are milestones, right? These are your rock and roll milestones, but they're also milestones in your own personal pantheon of experience.
Live music is so important, and live music is so transformational. Like when you go to a concert, you remember it forever.
Yeah. If it's good. Even if it's bad, you go, oh, God, that's the worst. But that was a seminal time. So I felt really fortunate. And
I just find it amazing. Sorry to interrupt you. I find it amazing that you came out of ASU, landed a global toothpaste commercial, went out, bought a car, and then you booked how many years in a row of the musical show?
I did a year and a half. It went on a year and 3/4.
Okay, but like you walked right into work. I mean,
well, I didn't walk. I studied.
You studied.
I worked really hard.
Yes.
I went to I went to ballet class. I wore a leotard. I
right there. It's
I'd never, I just studied. So I took singing lessons too, and I studied acting with this guy Jeff Corey. So it was part of I knew that was my path. I mean, it just took me in that direction.
Which is amazing that you came here and figured out how to study, what skills you needed, and then could start booking some actual jobs.
Lucky.
Yeah.
I was just blessed.
Because, I mean, how long did you live with your sister when you first came out here?
I think I lasted about 8 months.
That's amazing.
And 9 months. Yeah.
Some people come out here for years and they can't get anything going, right?
Yeah,
and
she got tired of me.
There you go.
She had 2 young daughters, and I was not the most responsible guy, but she was fantastic. She was just, everybody who was touched by her was touched. She helped Viola Spolin write her autobiography. Viola Spolin, no, I'm sorry. Not Viola Spolin. What did she, I'll think of it in a minute. She helped a very famous woman therapist, write her book. She lived at Esalen, in the late 60s, as part of their program. It was just amazing. So she really helped mentor me and helped me meet people and, gave me confidence to do that, as did my brother, who was still in San Diego.
It's amazing how, how much support you actually need to really go out on a limb and try a career in the arts. I
had a trust to pay for my tuition to go to dance class and acting school and voice lessons. So, and it covered my living. So it took a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. The one great gift my dad gave me, he gave me a life beyond him. So, so that was great. And so in 68, I was still hanging around the scene. 67. So in 68, I said, I've never been anywhere. I'm going to go to Europe. So I bought a car, a Volvo, and had it delivered to Paris. And then I flew over to London, and I met, and I stayed with people I had met through rock and roll in their apartment and stuff, their flat. Excuse me.
The tall flats and
yes. Yeah. And they just turned me on to all, and my eyes were wide open, and then I took the boat that flies, the boat that flies over to the coast, and I went to Paris, and I picked up my Volvo, and that was in May of 68, and I missed the Paris uprising.
Oh, really?
I missed it.
Huh.
I had no idea what was going on. And I just drove south, and I went through France, south of France, and I went into Spain, and I spent time. It was just fantastic. It's the only language I knew besides English, so it was good for me. I found out that that's the only place you can speak it in Europe.
It is indeed.
And so...
don't go to Portugal.
No. But I had a friend, Fred Hoffman. I have a friend. He said, go here, 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 and he named all the art places I should go to. So when I was in London, I went to the Tate, I went to the V&A, I went to the National. And when I got to Paris, I went, of course, to the Louvre, and I went to the Orangerie, which is no longer there. But I went to other places, and I went to all these things. When I got to Spain, I went to the Prado. I went, I got, and I'm looking at all this art that I'd never seen. I had no idea what it was, and it just filled me. So, and then I left the car, and I took a ferry to Morocco, and I met a kid who had been studying in Sweden, but he spoke English, and he said, come stay with me and my family in Casablanca. So I went, sure. So I went down there, and then I came back, and then I went into Italy. I went back into France, up through, Barcelona, France, into Italy. I met a wonderful guy who became a long-term friend because he was dating my friend Leslie, and I hooked up with her in Rome. She had been a dancer on the show.
Right, the one you did the collaboration with.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were an item for the time, and so I met him, and then I went on, and I went all through, I went to Greece. I didn't take the car there. And then I drove up through Yugoslavia up into Austria, and I went across, and I went to Munich. I ended up in Munich. And at Munich, I kind of went, it was, I don't know, I went, it must have been late summer, okay? So I went out to it. Beer garden, did all that stuff, and I said, I'm going to go to Dachau. I said, that's what I'm going to do. While I'm here. So I took a bus out to Dachau, and I went, oh my God, it hit me. Growing up Jewish, hearing about it, knowing people, it's not the same as seeing the physical property where buildings used to be, where chambers used to be, stuff like that. It blew my mind. And I'd been pretty good all the way through Europe. I mean, my mind was completely blown. But when that time, it just, it was like flipping over.
It's really transformational, isn't it?
It was transformational.
I was filming a few years ago in Poland, and we took a few days after filming and visited Auschwitz, and that was terrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to think about man's inhumanity to man, not just Germans to Jews, but the whole man's inhumanity to man brought to the fore. So I spent the night, got in my car, drove as far as I could, stayed in Cologne overnight, and then I went into Belgium, and then I went up and had a wonderful time up in Scandinavia, and I shipped my car from Sweden to L.A., and I came back.
That's a hell of a tour.
It was like my BA,
Yeah.
So
I've always said, like, instead of doing higher education, we should just send our kids around the world to learn what the world is like and then come back to the United States and make it a better place. Now, sure, if you're an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor, you do actually need to study. But for the rest of us, I think we just need life experience.
Yes, that's absolutely true. But some people can take it, some people can't. And some people get, they'll just get laid all the time, or you know what I mean? It's just not. So
I might not be as diligent as you are with your museum schedules.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that trip, I went to the Venice Biennale.
Mm-hmm.
Fred said, go to the Biennale. I thought, go to the Biennale. I mean, I'd gone through all the museums in Rome and in Florence, and I got to the Biennale. It was brand new. It was modern. It was all that stuff, and it was Venice. It was like, and I actually met a filmmaker there that I eventually did another film with here. That's a well-known art film, and it's collected by the Getty has a copy. I think the Museum of Modern Art in New York has a copy. Anyway, so I did that, and I went. I couldn't get back to acting. I was stunned. So I studied French, because if I wasn't going to South America, I needed another language. And so I studied French, and I kind of boned up on world religion, got a backpack, bought a round-the-world ticket, and went to Japan in '69.
That's amazing that your trip to Europe transformed you so much that you just needed to see the rest of the world.
Oh, I only saw a piece of the world, right? So I saw that. I went to Japan. I spent 6.5 weeks. So that's the first real non-Western country I'd ever been to, and it was. Have you been to Japan?
I have, yeah. But I don't mean to interrupt, but I had a similar experience. So I graduated university, and I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Where in
Toronto, Canada.
Oh, you went where? McGill?
University of Toronto.
University.
McGill's in Montreal.
Oh.
And I went, so I graduated university, and I was like, okay, I want to see something. So I went to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco.
Right.
And I had a similar experience to you. I visited the museums. I took it all in, but I was kind of bored. Because I was like, okay, it's amazing, but it's same. Like, okay, like North America, Western Europe, like it's too similar. So then on my next trip, I was like, I'm going to blow my fucking mind, and I'm going to China because, and then I was there for 18 years because I was like, I need to see something totally different.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's mind-boggling. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. My education going to those museums enlightened me. Being an actor, it's a visual as well as sensual and oral. It's everything, and all these images take part somewhere in the body. I didn't know. But by the time I got up to Amsterdam, I was in the Kunstmuseum. I look and I go, oh, that looks like a Ruwald. And I went, how do I know that? And it was because I'd seen Ruwald in other museums.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of, so back to that, Japan, 6.5 weeks. Then I went to the Philippines. Gary Lewis, who I'd mentioned earlier, his wife's family was from the Philippines. So they kind of introduced me around, showed me a little bit stuff. I went and saw stuff in the southern Philippines, phenomenal. I went to Taiwan. I saw probably one of the greatest art collections anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That when Chiang Kai-shek left China,
he took everything with him.
He took art.
Yeah.
He took everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is in this museum. And I only saw, they only show a piece of it. So I only saw a portion of it. And then I went from Taiwan, I went to Singapore. I had a pal that I'd met in Europe. And so I stayed with him in Singapore. He was a Scottish architect living in Singapore. And then I went up to Malaysia. Mm-hmm. And when I was coming out of that museum, the the National Museum. There's a guy coming up the steps, and I go, Afi? And he goes, yeah, who are you? I said, I live across the street from you in Laurel Canyon. And he goes, oh, my God. It was so weird. And he was Israeli, and he had driven his van from Israel to Malaysia.
That's a tough trip.
Yeah. And he said, I'm driving down to Singapore. Want to go? I said, sure. So, we did that. And then I went up to Thailand, and I went up to Cambodia. And that was another train. Have you been there?
I've been to Cambodia, yes.
Been to Angkor Wat?
Yeah, that's incredible. Quite spiritual, isn't it?
It was 1969.
Much less touristy, I'm guessing.
Well, we bombed in January of 70.
Oh, so it was before the attack, before the war really kicked off in Cambodia?
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I knew the war was going on in Vietnam.
That's right. Like, how crazy was it traveling through Southeast Asia in the middle of the Vietnam War?
It was, I'd see in certain towns, cities, R&R guys, but it didn't really affect me. I knew the war was going on, but I was surprised. I mean, Bangkok was like, they had KFC in 1969. They had, they were already colonized by us. So I went up to Cambodia and saw Angkor Wat. It was, you had to go to a kind of a staging area in Phnom Penh, and they have buses and taxis, Peugeot taxi, station wagons. 5 people would fit in it, and they'd go somewhere. So I took a ride up to Siem Reap to Angkor Wat. There was no fences. There was nothing there. So I just kind of got out there and met a guy, and he said, I'll be your guide. And I paid him $1 or $2. And he showed me all around. It was like a fairy, right?
Before all the tourists and before all that infrastructure was in, it must have been truly otherworldly.
It was. Trees were really growing over the stuff. I tell people who haven't been there, in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's right, yes.
They show the image of that face statue with the tree growing on it and stuff. That's what it was like all over.
Amazing.
Oh, it was amazing. I thought I'd gone into another world, and I had. And then I went down to, so I went back to Thailand, and my neighbor, who I'd become friends with, Carol King, we had arranged that she'd fly into Bangkok, I'd get on the plane, and we'd go to India together.
Amazing.
So we got on the plane together. I got on, and we went to India. She spent a couple of weeks with me there.
Where'd you go in India?
Well, we landed in Calcutta, and she had a couple of records to give to musicians that had been given to her by Albert Grossman. Albert Grossman was Dylan's manager. If you know the cover of John Wesley Harding, it's a Dylan album. It's a black and white album. There's a farmer, there's Dylan, and there's 2 Indian men. And these 2 Indian men had come to that area, and they are Bauls, B-A-U-L-S, Bauls of Bengal. And they had recorded there, and they had their musicians there, minstrels in that part of the world. And in West Bengal, they were minstrels, well known. Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, had written about them, about their ancestor. And so she wanted to give this album to this guy. So this guy, Lakshman Das Baul, came, and she gave him the albums and stuff. So anyway, that's because we went then, she and I, we went to Bodh Gaya.
Right, I've been there. Yeah, that's amazing. Where the birthplace of Buddhism.
Sat under a Bodhi tree. We spent New Year's 69-70 in Bodh Gaya. Then we went to Varanasi, which they call Banaras. Varanasi.
That's where the Hindus burn the dead in the Ganges.
That's not all. They marry. They come to. It's a pilgrimage. It's extraordinarily spiritual city.
Mm.
And I've never felt an atmosphere over my head. I never felt the weight of the atmosphere like I did there. You were there.
I was there, yeah. I did a 54-day motorcycle trip all around India.
Ah, okay.
So we did Bodh Gaya, Varanasi, Lucknow, Agra. We went all the way up from the Himalayas. We went all the way. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I knew you were going to get to there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was spectacular. Varanasi is just, you feel the weight of the city when you enter it.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
I mean, and, and there's bong lassi, which is a yogurt drink, but they put bong in it, which is wet marijuana, for lack of a cannabis. I don't know what they call it now, weed. And it was really intense. I felt extremely vulnerable there as a human. I mean, the people on the banks. I mean, I didn't go in the water. I know guys who did.
Mm-hmm. I always found it trying to be as spiritually sensitive as possible. I always found it incredibly disturbing that people were burning the bodies of their dead relatives on the beach of the Ganges, and then once it gets to a certain point, they kind of push it into the river.
Right.
And then right next to that, there's people washing, bathing, brushing their teeth in the river because they think
it's spiritual. They have to.
They have to, but obviously that's incredibly not great when you've got, yeah.
I wanted to. I didn't have the nerve.
No.
I didn't have the balls to do it.
I couldn't do it. Like, I think that was towards the end of our trip. Like, I think we were on day 45 by the time we got to Varanasi, and my immune system was so dead by that. I thought if I would have dipped one toe into the Ganges at Varanasi, I would have been in the hospital for a month.
Easily.
Yeah. Easily.
I mean, I got really skinny. I mean, I just, everything goes through you. So then I ended up, I went up to Nepal, and I went, I also went to Delhi, I went to Agra, and then...
Taj Mahal is still a winner, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
And you probably were there before all the gates and the lineups and the bullshit.
Yeah.
It's terrible now, but they're like, it's the only way...
Tank or what?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's the only way they can deal with like 10,000 or to 50,000 visitors a day or whatever they get.
Oh my God. Because I went back there, and I'll tell you. So I did that. I went. So then I got done with India. I didn't go to a lot of places I should have gone. Rajasthan, Jaipur, places I just didn't go.
I went to a temple in Rajasthan called the Rat Temple, where they worship rats because they believe that their ancestors are reincarnated into rats. So there's a whole temple where and we went in there and filmed, and it was like crazy because when rats congregate in those numbers, they're not healthy. Like, they're not like pretty looking.
Never healthy.
They're never healthy. But it was one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. Yeah. Still.
If for those who can't see, I'm open mouth, but I'm not right now. That is India. It's the essence of India.
It's the essence of India.
You walk around the corner. So when I went back to Calcutta, Carol went on, and I went back to Calcutta because I wanted to hang with Lakshman.
Mm-hmm.
Calcutta. Did you go there?
I went to Calcutta, yeah.
It's intense.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only place I've been where vultures sit on the cactus on a little river in a park. It's like, whoa. So I was stunned, but I went, I and Sally Grossman, Albert Grossman's wife, who happened to be there, didn't know Carol and I or anything. We went up and stayed with Lakshman up in his family's home, and then we came back, and it was otherworldly. He took me. He said, "You want to go visit Calicut, which is the temple, Kali." Now these guys play in the temples, in the Hindu temples. They're minstrels. So he said, "I've got to go upstairs, talk to somebody. Here, show this guy around." So this guy takes me. You look on one side, and on the other side, and look on the third side. Come around the fourth side. There's a big crowd of people in front of an opening on the side of the temple, and they're and I'm going, And he goes, "You want to see Kali?" And I went, "Yeah, sure." So he pries his way in and pulls the people apart momentarily, and then they close up. And he comes back and said, "Did you see it?" And I'm speechless now because I was really speechless then. I didn't believe I saw what I saw. So I said, "I don't think so." So he went and back, did it again. And it was a black lingam, about 4 feet tall. It had painted eyes, but with nothing in them, just eyes, yellow with no eyeball or anything, just the shape of 2 eyes, a round nose, a red mouth with jagged teeth, white teeth. So that, I still to this day, I mean.
And they were all just worshiping it.
Yes. So I went back and checked out of my, those shitty rooms you get with the rope beds and stuff like that. So I went out of that. I actually checked into a hotel that had a bed and a shower, because I was staying pretty low tide when I was traveling.
As you have to. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Once a week, you just you tap up a little and you get the hotel with the shower.
I went to in New Delhi. I went to the YMCA. Because it was cheap, but I could get a shower, right, and stay in a room there. But then I went back to Europe. I went through Afghanistan. I went to Iran. Iran was really interesting.
Iran's magic.
It is.
It was. It is. It was. I don't know.
It is in my heart.
Yeah. I've been there 3 times.
Yeah.
But all post 1979. So
yeah, I was there in 70. And then I ended up, went to Israel for a few days and then into Europe. And I stayed in Europe for another half a year.
What was your visit to Israel like? Because that would have been your first visit, and after you'd been to Germany.
Nobody's going to like what I'm going to say.
No, I mean, we can change the topic if you want. I mean, It's a hot button issue these days. We can.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay, we can leave it at that.
There are people I love who live there, but I don't like the political. I didn't like it then, and I don't like it.
What did you think of Iran when you were there traveling through?
Iran was a trip.
It was, isn't it?
Yeah, mosaics,
the tiles.
I mean, it was pretty magical. And so, and then I was in Afghanistan too.
So did you come through Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into southern Iran?
Pakistan,
yeah,
Afghanistan to Iran. And I was only Tehran. I think I went to Isfahan.
Oh, Isfahan's beautiful, man.
Amazing. And then, I mean, it's amazing. And then I went to Israel and I hopscotched to Rome, where I hung out with Ricardo, and he got me well because I had been, I was really skinny, and he got me to the doctor and stuff. And then I went and picked up my van up in Germany, and I drove back and stayed in Europe I lived in Paris for 5 months. And I got back, it just wasn't.
What do you mean? So this whole you
change.
Yeah, you're in change, you're on the road, and you come back to LA ready to work, and you're just like, no.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. So I moved down to North County, San Diego. I lived there for a couple of years. I met a buddy there, and he and I did a second round the world trip, but we did it the other way. We took him to London. He'd never been. So we saw my friends there. We stayed with them, and then we went down to Italy, which is where there are people who know me as Schwartzini or Dr. Zini. That's where Schwartzini was born.
There has to be a story behind it.
There is. So Ricardo lived in a house. He had a store on the Via Veneto, which is Rodeo,
the high street.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we were driving with my friend Ron, who I'd met up with there. This was in 70. I'm sorry. This was in 70. And we went, I picked up my van and went down, and So we were driving into town to Ricardo's store, which is the event. It's really snazzy, and there were these 1970. There was these two young women hitchhiking in Italy.
That's pretty brave.
It was insane. It was insane because I heard so many stories of travelers in Italy. Oh, they pinch me, they grab me, they that. So, of course, I pulled over and asked them where they're going. And they said, we're going into Rome. And I said, and immediately I put on my, we're going to Rome. So come with us and we take it to wherever you needed to go. So she said, what's your name? I said, my name is Schwartzini. I am Michelangelo Schwartzini.
That's a nice twist.
And so Ricardo, of course, goes right along with it, and everybody else, Ron. And it turns out that these two women had gone to Arizona State.
Oh, wow. They were alumni with you.
But they didn't know me.
Mm-hmm.
They were after me. So I said, I'm talking. He said, oh, yes, I went to Arizona State. I was a head cheerleader in Arizona State. And they go, oh, did you know Pascal Herrera? And Pascal had been on the cheerleading squad the second year. So I said, yes, I know him. He was a cheerleader. She said, yes, I know. So I said, so we're talking. I said, make sure when you get back, and they were from Philly, a couple Italian Americans from Philly, fabulous. They were really nice. And I said, when you get back, you talking to Pascal Herrera, you tell him you met Michelangelo Schwartzini, the former head cheerleader. And I prayed that they had done that and could see what he said. So after that, I became known as Schwartzini or Dr. Zini. And there are people here who know me, who call me Zini.
What was it that was such a turnoff coming back to LA that forced you out to go back out and see the world?
That's an interesting question.
Because you kind of made it. Like you had a few good average commercials that they were on a hit show. Like things were working. Like you could have just stayed here and worked, right?
It's not that easy. You got to get the gears going again. And I had the wanderlust in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved to North County, San Diego, and this buddy and I, so we took this second trip. It was only 4 months, this trip, but we spent a month in Afghanistan, 1972, because it was the Wild West.
For sure.
Wild West. We landed in Herat, which is on the border. You had to take a train to Mashhad.
That's in Iran.
Right. So take a train to Mashhad. You get off, you take a bus to the frontier. You get off the bus, you cross the frontier, and you get on another bus. And then they take you into Herat. And it was funky. But it was really interesting because it was 1972. And Herat, I don't even remember if there were paved streets, but they were graded.
Oh, wow.
They were graded really, and so they were dusty and there were embassies or consulates around, and there were armored vehicles for different foreign countries. That was really odd. I'd never seen that.
Was maybe Kabul at the time was too dangerous to put in consulates or embassies, or
no. I think this was an outpost.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and so we're there, and we made friends with the kid out front. Sold us some hash of our traveler hotel. Those traveler hotels, funky. And this kid, and one day he said, "Hey, you want to go see a dogfight?" I said, "Yeah." So we get up in the morning, and we go downstairs, and the kid's waiting there. I mean, I'm going to say he's a kid. I'm 1972. I'm 28, so this kid's 20, 22. And this school bus pulls up with a Sikh driving it, and it's empty. And we get on. We don't have to pay anything. We get on, and there's two other passengers. They pick up another. Then we drive out into the middle of the desert. No road. We start on a road. We just drive out. And there's these people out in the middle of the desert. And they're all in their robes and their turban. And they're gathered together, and these guys, and the kid says, come over here. Just sit over here for a while. So we actually smoked some Afghani sheesh, and we waited. And so a group formed, a large kind of circle, and then another group formed a different circle. And then those circles broke up, and other circles broke. And then finally they did that 3 or 4 times, and they made a huge circle. And from every corner, people were coming. They're coming on bicycles, motorcycles, on foot. And some of them had dogs, and they're Coochie fighting dogs. Coochie's a tribe. And they looked like German Shepherds. They had their ears cut off so that they were flat, and they had their tails cut off. And some of them wore woven, fabulous yarn things. The dogs,
like dog sweaters or something, like sun protection or something, or
no, it was adornment. So then they get in the circle, and all the people, they stake their dog. They put an iron stake on a chain with their dog around the inner side of that circle, and 2 very interesting and flamboyant men in robes start walking around, and they start making matches. What they're doing is they're making a match, and then they make a match, and then people bet.
Mm-hmm.
And then so the 2 people take their dogs. By this time, they've taken off the adornment. They have a leather collar, and they face each other, and the dogs rear up on their hind legs, and their feet are spread out, their front feet, so you can kind of see the webbing,
mm-hmm.
and you can see their teeth and stuff. And on a signal, they let go at the same time. The dogs clash in the middle. Fortunately for me, as soon as a dog got the better hand, they called it off.
Oh, really? So it wasn't to
the death.
Oh,
I mean,
it's a brutal activity. I mean, I've been to some like cockfights and stuff like that in similar parts of the world, and it's brutal. They go to the death. But
yeah. I was really fortunate.
Yeah,
they didn't go to the death, and so that was, I was in the Wild West.
Yeah, people don't understand what it's like out that far off the grid.
Yeah, and so, and here's interesting. So we're doing this. We're looking around. And off in the distance, there's 3 people come riding up on steeds, dressed in total Afghan finery, fur hats, and you remember the fur trim coats and sashes and and 2 of them are blonde, a man and a woman, and the other one might have been the guide. And they come up, and they're kind of looking around, and they watch one fight, and then they ride off to God knows where. And it was like, where am I? We ran into them in Kabul. They were on the street. They had just put together some kind of fantasy whatever, but I mean, it was like they dropped out of, Aladdin.
Were they Europeans?
Yeah, German.
Okay. Because it's not uncommon to find blonde-haired people who are actually local to Afghanistan, and the blue eyes and everything. Like, it's such a melting pot in that part of the world that you never know what you're going to find.
No, these were definitely out of town. Yeah. So, and so we spent a month in Afghanistan, and we had a great time there. Then we went to a little bit of India. I took them to Agra. So we saw full moon. Taj was... all those pictures people see, all the stories they hear, you can even see it in a film and stuff.
No.
It doesn't come close.
You got to be there.
It doesn't come close. And the acoustics, it was deafening.
Mm-hmm.
If we were alone And then someone would come in and would go, there was even Paul Horn, the flute player, jazz flute player. He cut an album in there doing that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so then we went up to Nepal and spent a month, which was phenomenal.
Kathmandu, and where else did you hit?
Oh, we went to Pokhara, and we went then up the Jomson Trail up to Tatopani, and saw Annapurna, Dhalagiri and Nilagiri.
Jomsom is a strange little place, isn't it? It's such a jumping off post for all the hikes and the treks up in that area.
Yeah.
We went a couple years ago. We filmed in Nepal. We went so Jomsom is kind of like you go up and then you go east. We went up to Jomsom and kind of went west, and we went to the Mustang Kingdom.
Oh, Mustang.
Yeah.
Well, there was a guy in Tatopani. His name was Jawatan. We stayed in, these little way places, overnighters.
Same with us. Yeah.
So and one night we were in, and this Mongolian-looking guy comes in. He's got a turban. He's got a huge smile. He's missing a tooth. His name was Dawatandu, and he was a chieftain from Mustang in 1970. And he had come down with his people to trade. He had take whatever they had, whatever he was trading from there, he brought down to probably Pokhara to trade and then go back. But he was a hoot. I mean, we just laughed. We didn't know each other. We couldn't talk, but there was a communication.
Did you ever read into the history of the Mustang Kingdom?
I have not.
So there are, it's pretty factual now actually, but the CIA was training Gurkhas in the Mustang Kingdom to go across the border into Tibet and cause shit for the Chinese. And a lot of Tibetans escaped from Tibet, China, at that where that is, into the Mustang Kingdom to get out.
And they also went down to Nepal.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Because our guide was a lama.
Yeah, and they think the Dalai Lama actually came out of Tibet through the Mustang Kingdom. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who actually went there on horse.
But it was closed off. So
let me go.
Yeah, it's because it was closed off, I think, for military purposes for decades, and then they just reopened it maybe 15 years ago.
Oh, see, they said it was open, but they said it's really dangerous. So we didn't go.
It wasn't dangerous when I went, but it was definitely a tough trek.
It was really dangerous. Yeah. And the same thing happened in Afghanistan. We had met this guy on the train from Iran to from Istanbul to Iran to Tehran, an Afghani. And so we looked him up and stuff, and he took us up to his village up in North Afghanistan. Bakalan was the name. His dad was a farmer. His mom was his fifth or sixth wife, something like that. This guy was 84 and had a 6-year-old.
Wow.
With a young wife. And
sounds like a Hollywood A-lister.
Yeah. Oh man, that is cruel.
Sorry, they just end up having all these families. It's yeah. I think Elon Musk has fathered like 12 children now.
This is an A-lister?
No, but he's the richest man in the world. But there's I think Robert De Niro, who's 70-something, just had a kid.
So
yeah, 80-something. Yeah,
he's got a young kid.
Yeah.
I also have a friend who's a rock and roller in his 70s who has a young child.
Afghanistan. His father was a farmer.
Oh, so they said, I hear this area is good, and they go, you can't go there unless you have an armed guard. And I went, really? I ain't going there. But we bought some rugs and stuff, and we shipped them back, and we sold them to kind of cover the costs of the trip. Jewelry, had a great time there, and then we came back. And then I was ready.
Ready to get back into the...
went back to North County, San Diego. I was there for a bit, and I said, I'm ready. So I came back, and I fortunately started studying with a woman named Peggy Fury, who is a wonderful acting teacher. I could name you countless wonderful actors, some stars, who studied with her, who were in my class, but we won't go there because... So I was lucky, and I stood, but, I I didn't have the income I had.
No, I imagine, right? Like you go off and you make some good money, and then you go around the world spending it. You come back, you got to start again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I was, doing okay. I had my house in Laurel Canyon, and then I sold it. I bought a house in North County. I sold it, and then I moved back up here, and I was living again in West Hollywood, over there near Beverly and San Vicente. Just the same neighborhood. And I bought a house out in Mar Vista, which is west of here. Anyway, I started to study, and I got involved in theater again, and that was really terrific. Doing some great stuff. I got in a company called the Company of Angels. They were on Vine Street, and I did some plays there. I got good reviews. I did some commercials, did some stuff, here and there. I didn't have, quote, the success, but I had the artistic. I felt better about my work.
I was going to ask you that, like, what was the difference between, doing the work before you traveled around the world, and then coming back to LA and doing the work again? Like, what was your perspective of that?
After Europe, I went. After the first trip around the world, I came back and I went, I'm not doing the work. I'm not doing my art. So that's why I left. And then I did that other trip. And then by that time, I kind of went, okay, let's go back. So I lived here, and then I bought that house, and I took a great improv class, worked with some wonderful people that helped. So I did stuff like Mork Mindy, and I did, a small piece because my friend who was a teacher there was a director.
I love Mork Mindy.
Yeah, he was a fantastic artist. His name is Howard Storm, and he directed all the Mork Mindys. He had done Rhoda, but he had segued out of teaching improv, and there were brilliant people in.
I couldn't imagine what it must have been like to direct Robin Williams.
Well, he was in. Yeah. Howard treated him, worked with him great. He worked with him spectacularly. And he got, it was never the same. Nothing was ever the same, but it always worked. So I worked on a couple of those shows. He was on it. Huge. I was stunned. He was so intense, but he did a great job. And I was surprised that Pam Dauber could be with him all that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like when you listen to Robin Williams tell stories of his life when he was doing Mork and Mindy, because he was at the Comedy Store every night almost too, right? So he would be in the studio all day doing Mork and Mindy, then he would do a bunch of drugs, then he would go to the Comedy Store, then he'd do a bunch of drugs, then he'd wake up at 5 a.m. and go back to the studio, and like he did this for and it just destroyed him. But he talks about it openly, or he had talked about it openly.
Yeah.
On a few podcasts I watched.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was an interesting man. I didn't get to know him personally, but I did see him up close, and he was dynamic, to say the least. And then someone I knew got me on M.A.S.H, so I did a scene with Alan Alda. That was really cool. And I did some other stuff, back. Yeah, I did stuff like that back in the 60s. I was also did some movies. I did Winter a Go-Go. This was post Beach Blanket.
Bingo.
This was winter. And I also did one called Wild Wild Winter. And so, I had some resume and stuff. I did, in that time, I worked with a guy, Alan Landsberg, who produced all kinds of interesting stuff. And he produced a show called The Missing Heirs. And it was a show where they would find someone who had left fortune, and then they would reconstruct a life about that person and then show it as a segment. I was a narrator host of one of the segments, so I did stuff like that. It was great. And
were you still dancing?
No,
because that seemed to be a huge part of your
It
early life.
It was not my future, and I knew that. I was good. I was really good at rock and roll, but I couldn't hit a triple turn or do stuff like that. And I saw the toll it took on people, and that kind of put me off a little bit. And what I really wanted to do was act, because when I did American Bandstand, I just saw a copy of it, and Dick said, so afterwards, because he said, so what do you want to do? And I said, well, what I really want to be is I want to be known as a good actor. And it was even then that I knew that that's really what I thought was an important thing. I moved to New York. I got a good review in a play, and I moved to New York in '82. And
what was it like going from LA all the way to New York? Yeah. Like fucking winter.
Yeah.
Well, that's new.
Yeah. Oh, totally new. Oh, yeah. There's a funny story about that. But I thought, well, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
So the jingle goes.
So the song goes.
Yeah.
And so I went there, and I got into theater there. I met my wife. I was with a theater company called Matrix Theater, not Theater Matrix, which is here in Hollywood. It was called Matrix Theater, and I met some wonderful people, and I was doing starring in these one acts, and I met my wife. She was a young set designer, and that was the first. And I was living in the West Village.
Legendary.
Yeah. I had a place a little bigger than this, but not much. And so I actually got work from one of the plays. I was on Ryan's Hope.
Okay.
I did an off-Broadway production of After the Fall, an Arthur Miller play. I did some off-Broadway stuff, and I catered. I waited on tables. I helped my friends open up a restaurant called Lucy's, the retired surfers bar up on the West Side, which became well known. And then I carried drywall. I painted bathrooms. Right.
Got to do what you got to do.
Got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And I was digging New York, but that winter thing, my wife, the second year I was there, I met her kind of in the second year, and it was winter, and I had a ski jacket, little short ski parka, little short one with a zipper, and I said, I'm so cold here. I'm so cold. She goes, what are you doing? You need a coat. And then our friend Alpha Betty Olson said, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's only bad clothing.
Yeah, you got to prepare.
You got to prepare. Sure. So that was a big lesson. And that helped, but it didn't help long enough. So after 5 years, we'd moved out to Brooklyn, which was fabulous. I actually moved to Brooklyn where I thought it was the New York of my dreams. Brownstones, Italian, I mean, the village was great because it was a hodgepodge. It was still very Italian where I lived. But moving out there was like, moving to, the Bowery Boys or any of those old movies I'd seen. But one day I just went, I got to be able to walk out my back door and go into my yard.
In the winter.
Anytime.
It's amazing. Like, I've only lived in LA now for 9 months or so, and yeah, and the idea of going to New York for a winter would just kill me.
Yeah, how about going home?
I only go to Toronto in the summer, and only for a week at a time, maybe if I'm lucky. Yeah, I don't think I could do another Canadian winter. Although my brother still lives in Toronto. He said that
it's getting warmer.
Yeah, the winters are much more mild. Yeah, something's going on.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I used to be able to. I had to put in air conditioning in my house.
Yeah,
on the upstairs. We didn't do the whole house, but we used to have cool breeze.
Last 2 weeks have been really hot.
I had to put on the AC. That was bad. So I moved back here, and
your wife followed you? She didn't tell you to?
No, actually.
She didn't tell you hell no?
Yeah, she's several years younger than me. And when her folks met me, she lived in upstate New York. And when her folks met me, they said, "You're marrying this old, bald Jew actor from California," which was like
the wrong side of the country.
Definitely the knife through the heart. She said, "Yeah." So she thought she was just going out to live for a while. But she got pregnant. And so I wasn't working much. And I had a gig in New York where I was a telemarketer. And but I wasn't sales. What I did, I worked for a friend of mine who had a brokerage firm here, Tilt Gardner, wonderful guy. I met him through, most of my friends here were artists, visual artists. My next door neighbor, who became a very close friend, is Ed Ruchet, who's a wonderful artist, brilliant. He's got a retrospective, had it at MoMA, and now it's here at Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And so this guy, I met him through that group because he was a part of the gang. And so I came here and he said, "How would you like to do that for me here? Come down and just telemarket."
You were the world's first remote worker.
But what I would do was I would organize conferences where for business. So if a brokerage firm, and they all used to do this, they probably still do, they get a bunch of companies together and they get all their clients to come and meet the companies, and they talk and learn who to invest in and not who to invest in. So I did that in New York, and I did that here. And one day he walks in and he goes, with the manager of the firm, the local manager, he goes, "You know what you're doing is being a broker." I said, "It is?" And he goes, "Yeah, you call people." He said, "Why don't you try it? You could make $40,000 or $50,000 a year."
Now, the 70s, that's big money.
I had a kid coming. It may have actually, yeah, he was coming because he got born in December of 87. And I said, "Can I still act?" And he goes, "Sure." I said, "Tell you what, pay me to study and pay me to keep doing my calls, and I'll do it." So I studied, I took the test, and my acting wasn't happening. I was with a really good group, but it wasn't happening. So I needed the money. So I started and I figured it out, and I finally found my niche or niche, depending where you come from. And I became an institutional stockbroker.
Wow. What a transformation.
Yeah. Stockbroker.
From doing hashish in Afghanistan to being a stockbroker in Los Angeles.
Don't leave out Nepal.
Nepal hashish. Which hash is better?
No. I got no idea.
It all worked the same.
No, some were stronger than others.
Yeah.
Like now. Anyway, so I took the gig, and instead of doing what normal, regular people know as stockbrokers, those are people you come to and they help you manage your personal finances. I worked with institutional managers, guys who ran funds, mutual funds, banks, hedge funds, just and I helped them understand what ideas we thought were good, because we had analysts, and our analysts would cover sectors: transportation, finance, medical, prescription, retail.
And back then, people couldn't just buy stocks by themselves. They had to go through a broker. It's like today, you can just go online and buy whatever you want.
These guys were pros.
Yeah.
So because being a retail broker was not for me. I had one lady right at the beginning. She would call me up every day, Lillian Portnoy. She'd call me up every day.
You remember that name?
Oh, man. It's seared. My stocks are down. My bonds are up. My stocks are up. My bonds are down. One day I said, "Listen, Lillian, I have a mother. I'm not good. I'm giving you to another broker. So that ended my foray. But this was good because these guys are professionals, and ostensibly they know what they're doing. They do their job. They do their research on our research, and then they pay in commissions and such. Well, I did that for 28 years.
Oh, wow. So this started in the 80s, just before your first child was born.
87. Yeah. And I met a lot of people. I still have 3 really good friends who are in the business. Really wonderful people who I love. And I acted like a broker. You know, it was I memorized the script.
20+ year role.
28-year run. Exactly.
What did it feel like? What did it feel like sitting down and being an institutional stockbroker, and then remembering those days of being absolutely free and wild, traveling through Iran and Pakistan? And are you like, did you,
to mention Hollywood?
Not to mention Hollywood, but did you long to go back on these world tours, or did you just get it out of your system and you were ready to like live normally?
I needed to pay the bills. That was like, I felt really, I was a middle-class Jewish kid who needed to pay the bills.
Life catches up, right?
Yeah. It's like, hello, I'm your baby. And the baby transformed me. It was as transformational as anything. This young thing in that room, I learned what unconditional love was, which is big.
So changes had to be made.
Changes were made. And it only enriched me as a person and all that. And, you know, I got off early because I was on New York time. I'd get up at 3:30 and I'd be in the office I'd get up at 3:30, have a conference call at 4:20.
Ouch.
Which is, you know, 7:20 back there. And then I'd be in the office and I'd be out by 2 and I could coach the kids. I could coach basketball and baseball and stuff. And it was really important for me to have that experience because I never had that growing up.
No.
And I wanted my kids to have that. So then 10 years ago, which is how I met Marta, 10 years ago, I was, what did they tell my friend in Kansas City? I had an accelerated retirement.
You gotta walk me through that.
They wanted me to go.
Yeah.
They wanted younger guys. I was 70. So I went, I wanted to do it 2 or 3 more years and save money. But man, it was the goose that laid the golden egg.
So it got you out?
It got me out. I was bummed for 30 minutes. I said, I'm going back.
Why not?
So my wife is a wonderful set designer. She's brilliant. She's doing a show right now up at Seattle Rep, which is a national theater of renown. It's like a Broadway show. And she had done some sets at a theater not far from us. And they had an acting school. So I figured I needed to get back in the gym. So I went over and interviewed with John Ruskin at the Ruskin Theater. And he had this Ruskin school. And I said, you know, DDD. And he said, I'd be honored to have you in the school. And I went, great, I'll do it. It was a 2-year program. And it's based on the technique of Sandy Meisner. And what I'd learned up to that point was, quote, the method, Strasberg. So it was totally different. And I found it to be very compatible with what I think is important when you're working with someone as an actor. And I loved it. And I completed the 2-year program. And about a year later, they asked if I would teach. So I substitute teach. And subsequently, I've done a bunch of student films. I've got a film on Apple Plus right now called Penitentia, where I have 4th billing.
I haven't seen that yet.
No, it's on Apple Plus. You have to pay for it. It's called Penitentia. Penitentia, folks. And sorry, that was crude. And I had worked with Devo.
What's Devo?
Devo, the band Devo.
I don't know Devo.
Are you listening, folks? He doesn't know Devo. Maybe you don't either. Devo. Are we not? Whip It.
Oh, I remember Whip It. Yeah.
That was their hit.
Okay.
They were new wave.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Okay. Great band. They did all kinds of stuff, and they were really good with video, especially gentleman Jerry Casale, who's still my friend. So I did, they asked me, I was living in New York, and so it was 82. 80. I'd done a film with them here. They were going to do their first national tour. And so they wanted a film that was in the middle of the show that took them from one costume into the other costume, from the new costumes into the old yellow suits that they used to wear.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to wear goggles. They were really great. And I was their arch villain. So we did a bunch of stuff. Fast forward, I'm in New York. They bring me back to do something else. We did another film. Lorraine Newman played my daughter. Remember Lorraine Newman from Saturday Night Live?
I do, yeah.
And Timothy Leary had a little part in it. But it's also, still Rod Reuter. And then a couple of years ago, Jerry wanted to make another film. So we made a film up at Mark's house. And they're touring the world now. They've toured Europe. They've gone to Australia. They've done England. And they use this film now to open the show.
So it's like 40 years later.
Exactly. So they show a clip of the old one, and then it's me, and it was just post-COVID. My hair was long, and it was just great. I go, that was me 40 years ago. And then bring them up to speed and open the show.
It's amazing how, like, you work with people once, and, like, 40 years later, you still get a call.
That's brilliant. I wish the people who I'd worked with are alive.
Sounds like some of them partied a little too hard.
Back then, yes. Yeah, it was an interesting time. And so I've done those films. I've done a bunch of short films. I did one wonderful one called The Projectionist, No Dialogue, where I am a projectionist with film in a theater, and it's basically the story of digital coming in and analog going out, about film being replaced by digital. And there's no dialogue, and it's all shot on film.
That's beautiful.
Young man had a dream. So right now he's looking to put it into festivals and stuff like that.
Mm. That's very beautiful, though. That's nice. Because, that transition is huge. Like, I started my career as a still photographer.
Right.
And I worked for the New York Times covering China for 10 years. But my first few assignments were on film. And then I even published 2 books later, one on the Uyghur people in northern China. And then
the Uyghurs.
Yeah, and then who you must have met in Afghanistan and in Pakistan and everywhere.
Who are in the news now.
Yeah, for all the worst.
Wrong reasons.
Yeah. It's not the best. Not the best. But what I did was I saw the way these amazing people were living in Western China, and fell in love with the culture, their way of life, and the architecture, and everything was so special. And I was like, well, like, Shanghai has changed so much. That's where I was living, in Shanghai. And I was like, well, the change is going to hit here some stage as well. So when I was working for the New York Times, I was doing all this journalism work.
You chronicled it.
Yeah. So I really just was like, I'm just going to go. So 4 times a year for 10 years, I went out there and just shot for 7 to 10 days. Each time, different villages, different people.
Yes.
I had the same guide the whole time, same local guy. He would take me to visit his friends and family. And I would just do that as like my vacation, as a way of like getting my head.
Art.
Yeah. It was spectacular.
That
was spectacular.
Great.
And of course now it's all changed and it's all different now.
Everybody's in irons.
I don't know exactly that, but
if they're alive.
Yeah, there's a lot of manufacturing and sweatshops and things like that that's happening out there. It's not the best. But when I was there, none of that was happening. So it was kind of a more pure moment.
Oh, none of that was happening. In Afghanistan, it was Wild West. We heard a story of a guy, an American, who was making a peace walk, and he had a donkey, and he was making a peace walk across. He started in Europe, and he got to Afghanistan, and had seen something that people didn't want him to see, and they killed him.
Jesus, just like that.
Boom.
No due diligence. No right to an attorney. That's the thing you got to remember. Like when you travel to other countries, people don't give a shit.
Wild West.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't. You ride in vehicles in Europe even, or in anywhere. Hanoi. You ride in a car, you're taking or a bus, you're taking your life in your hands.
I always tell people the hardest thing I've ever done was to ride a motorcycle around India and live to tell the story.
Absolutely. I believe you.
I had a little like 350cc Royal Enfield, and
it's tiny.
Yeah, because we wanted to have so we didn't really know what India was.
Who's
right? I did this with my brother, Colin, yeah. So I made 3 motorcycle shows. One was called Tough Rides China, where we went all the way around China with my brother. Then the second one was Tough Rides India, and then the third one was Tough Rides Brazil, where I did it by myself.
Yeah.
So, but India was rough because we didn't really know what we were getting into, and we thought okay, we need 800cc bikes because those are big, strong bikes. But then in India, going more than 30 miles an hour is terrifying because stuff's coming at you everywhere.
Everywhere.
So the slower you, the cows, but so the slower you go is the better. So we thought okay, let's ride a local bike because we can get Royal Enfield, and then we can find places to fix it along the way, even if it's not a well-built motorcycle, which it wasn't at the time.
Right.
So it broke down a lot. We had to fix it. But then fixing it's part of the fun because then you get to meet the local people and you get to meet the mechanic and his family. So it works for the show. But every day we almost died.
I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe chickens, kids, cars.
We saw people get run over by huge trucks too. It was pretty
splat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's funny because everyone says oh, India has the most populous nation in the world now. They just took over China. So India is now at 1.4. China's at 1.3.5 billion. Who's counting? But the thing that people don't understand is India is much smaller. So you can put 3 or 4 Indias in China. So in China you have 1.3 billion people, but they're all on the East Coast, right? They're all in the manufacturing cities and places like Beijing. You go to Western China, it's empty. But in India, everyone is everywhere all the time, and there's no rest.
I understand. When we went up to West Bengal, to that town where he lived with his family, it was like being, I tell people, it was the density of a city.
Yeah.
They were farms there. It was dense.
People everywhere.
People everywhere. And people,
I remember going from Calcutta. We went from Calcutta up to Darjeeling.
Oh my God.
To the tea plantations and
so
things.
Did you go through Bodh that way?
No. Then we came down from Darjeeling and then we went to Bodh Gaya and Varanasi on the way back to Delhi. We started and finished in Delhi. But I remember going from Calcutta up to Darjeeling, and on that journey you ride 500, 800 miles along the border with Bangladesh. And at that time, that was East Pakistan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, when I did it, it was Bangladesh. And there were so many Bangladeshi refugees coming across into India, and there were children on the highway by themselves, no adults around. And they were you'd have 4 or 5-year-old kids kind of wandering around on the highway, and you and it's dusk and it's night and there's cows and there's trucks coming at you and there's these kids and you're just what is going on in this fucking country? And it's just people everywhere.
I understand.
Yeah. No one really, people who live here don't get that.
It's so claustrophobic.
So claustrophobic.
There are moments in life, I've found moments in life where, say you're walking just straight line, something happens and you move to the right a little bit and you go through your life the rest of the way that way. And then something will bump you and you'll go to your left, but it still encompasses that right. Your path is never the same. It always is altered by things just like this. In Calcutta, I was coming home one night to my hotel
Mhm.
And I had been seeing these people, begging on the streets and laying there, laying on the streets, and
Very common.
very common, laying on the streets. Come back one night, and it's the fog, right? And there's a horse-drawn cart, big wheels, spokes. Oh, no. They had tires, but it was a cart, drawn horses. And they were picking those people up and putting them on the cart because they were dead.
Yeah. And people just go around and clean up the streets like that.
That was one of those moments when I'm walking down the way and life has changed, man. I can never unsee or go back. There's people that don't understand that.
India, I feel like India, of all the countries I've been to, India has those moments every day.
Every day.
I don't think I've ever grown as much as a person every single day as I did traveling around India.
Do you spell that Groan or OWN?
Growing. The Canadian accent is still there a little bit. No.
Or you could have groaned every day.
But no, I mean, like we've done trips all around the world, but India was quite special.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it just was nonstop. There's no rest.
So what's it been like, kind of prematurely having to exit institutional finance and go back into acting in your 70s? I mean, like
Heaven.
Because that's a tough transition.
Man, it was bliss. I got to tell you.
Because it sounded like they forced your hand a few years earlier than you wanted to leave.
Yeah, but c'est la F and V, man.
Yeah.
At first I was embarrassed and angry. I said, if I could work 2 more years, I could save X.
Mm-hmm.
And I was making really good dough. I mean, I had no idea that I could make that kind of money. So that was low. But, they gave me what they call a
golden parachute.
Severance.
Yeah.
Not a parachute.
Just a severance.
Just a severance. And so I took it and I went on. And it's been, I forgot 90% of all those stock symbols I knew within less than 3 months. I mean, I remember IBM because it was IBM.
Sure.
But, GM was GM. But, I don't remember any of them. It's great. It was great. It was a burden lifted off my shoulders. I'd done my job.
But what was it like trying to re-enter the arts after that?
I was lucky because I didn't have to go to work too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fabulous.
Because you could throw yourself 100% back into it.
100%.
Yeah.
And I could do the homework and I could get my swing back. I could do my layup. I could take that jump shot from outside, but it took some time to build the muscle back up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just had nothing but fun.
What was it like trying to build up your network again? Because so much of this town is who you know, and
Possible. The big change I got was when we used to audition, you go into the audition room, right? Then they got videos, and they would video your audition.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left the business in the early 80s, it was still, you go in and they just tape you.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's called self-tape.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do it at home.
I've heard this is terrible.
Well, either that or you have fun and try and do it.
Well, my friend who's an actor, Thomas, and he was on the show a few months ago. He was saying he's an actor, right? So his job is to interpret the character and come up with his version of whatever that character is going to be. That's the actor's job, right?
Right.
Read the lines on the page, create the character, deliver. But then the job of the actor is also work with the director. So maybe the director will say, I like what you did on that one, but try it like this. This is where I see the character going. You're doing great, but let's try one like this, and then if not, we'll come back.
Absolutely.
So all of that dialogue, all of that injection of information and that sharing of ideas doesn't happen when you do a self-tape.
No, but you get it on the job.
If you get the job.
Right. But
There's the rub.
yeah, the thing is that, people are really bummed, and it takes a lot of time. It's expensive. Fortunately, a lot of the time, my wife has been my producer. She's run the camera, and you can an advantage is doing several takes and then taking one that's good.
Yeah, we're going to do this whole podcast again.
How long can you hold your breath?
Not that long.
You're fucked. But I've learned how to edit it in my phone. Some people are even better at it. They do it on their computer, but I just don't want to do that. But when I really need it, I got a couple of people that I'll go and I'll pay them, and we'll do it. But I think part of the challenge is to come up with a character and do it. And if they like it, great. If they don't, great. I mean, I played in a wonderful short film. This young man, I can't think of the name of the film, but it's about the persecution of homosexuals. And particularly my character was in the concentration camp in Germany, and I'd survived. So I played a survivor of a homosexual survivor of a German concentration camp. So I got to speak with this German accent, and that was great to do.
What an interesting character.
And so the premise is these two young men, right? They're trying. One of them is trying to get their uncle, who had liberated a camp, come forward and tell what he saw. And he wanted to get it on camera because there's a technology now where you can go on camera and they shoot you from several angles at one time and ask you thousands of questions. And then people can go in and a hologram and ask you those questions, and they'll get an answer. That was my guy. I had done that. So they go in and they ask me these questions, and eventually they get a chance and turn his uncle into saying, yes, I'll do that. It was a wonderful film. I was proud to be involved with it for so many reasons. I learned the persecution of Jews was awful.
Mm-hmm.
The persecution of stuff I read of homosexuals was awful because they were also physically just, anyway, it was, so it was a lot.
I just at that time, being anything that they didn't want you to be was terrible.
Yeah. There were colors. So the Jews wore the yellow star.
The Star of David.
Star of David. They wore the star. The homosexuals had to wear pink.
Oh, really?
They
branded them as well.
Yeah. The political prisoners wore red, and common criminals wore green.
Wow, that was the color system. Was that at all the ghettos and all the concentration camps?
I believe so. Yeah. Phenomenal.
I remember knowing about the Star of David, but I didn't know they branded homosexuals with pink armbands.
Yeah. It's just. So I mean, I got to do that in the last 5 years. That was just a gift.
I think there's been pre-COVID. Yeah, I think there's a real resurgence in the desire to create stories using very experienced older actors. I mean, there has
your lips, baby.
Well, there has to be, because you have all these amazing actors. Like I was speaking with Marta about this too. Like there's all these amazing actors that have all this experience and all this talent, and just fucking writes great stories for them. Like there's a billion great stories you can write, and I feel like they're starting to really do it. Like there's a lot of actors coming out of the woodwork again after maybe not being so active for the last 20 years. And they're coming back in and having second winds of brilliant careers.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to doing that. If I could just remember my lines. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it used to be. My stamina ain't the same. But what I have, I love to tap. And when the parts and I can be real, it's fantastic.
I mean, as a, how many auditions are you doing a month, for example?
Well, let's see. Last week I had one. Today I got one. I'll shoot tomorrow.
And do you have an agent?
I have an agent and a manager.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yes. And you can, and it's amazing that you took 28 years off and then you can get right back into it.
Well, it takes some digging, but I understand that. I mean, so when I teach younger people as well as older people, and it's a broad range of ages, which is great. But some of the younger people, a young woman I was teaching, she just went, "Oh, God, just can't do it anymore. They're doing this. My friends are doing that. They're doing this, and I can't do this. I can't do that." And it's heartbreaking. It's hard, and all those people who get up at awards and say, "Keep at it," they've been through the shit. And it's truly a drag. I mean, even now to be not even considered for something I thought I did great on is like, what are they thinking?
It's hard. I mean, obviously the death of art is comparison, right? So you can't start comparing your version of a character with someone else's version of a character, or your career path with someone else's career path, because you'll make yourself insane.
Yeah.
So, I think everyone's on their own journey and everyone will reach wherever they're supposed to reach at different times. And you just have to keep doing the thing.
Look, I think I've had a great run. Phenomenal run. I just want to keep playing.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, if you died, would you?" No regret.
Every day you wake up as an artist is so much better of a day than any other day. Because if you have a normal job or you're doing something else, the stress that comes with that, and bosses and upper people and blah, blah, blah. But when every day you wake up as an artist and you only have to worry about your own tools, there's a lot of stress, and you don't know when your next job is going to come and all that. And I know that I fundraise, I try to make TV shows, I'm playing the same game, but at least I'm working for myself. Yeah.
Right. You're lucky.
Yeah.
And there's people who do work like that, in the straight jobs, as I call them, because I had a straight job for 28 years, and it served me, but God, I was well served out.
But again, it's that freedom to go back into what you truly love, right?
Yeah.
And with some financial cushion, at least, maybe.
Praise the fates. Yeah.
Because what's very popular now is like a lot of young actors that come out here to Hollywood, and they might get a bit of early success, but there's too much time between the jobs. Yeah. And that waiting is really painful, and they want to be creative and they want to do things, but they have to wait like 6 months till they book their next job or something. So, they're still waiting tables. A lot of them are doing like work on social media to make money.
Yeah. I mean, you wait on tables, you work in theater. There's small theater. There's every kinds of theater here. LA is a vibrant theater scene. It's just that the young people don't go to it. Mostly older people go. And it's too bad because, I've seen stuff at Rogue Machine, at the Ruskin. I saw a show at the Geffen last weekend. It was phenomenal. What you want to do, what I think people look for is to be moved in some way.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And to be able to experience that. And they think maybe they're getting it in this little phone, this little handheld computer, but they're not. The live thing is tangible, right? And your texts, your posts, there's no nuance, man. You can put in nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
there's nothing better than seeing live performance, and there's nothing better than performing live.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still go to music. I need it.
It's ingrained in you, I think.
And I go to art shows, and I go to the museums.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in me.
And what's life like now in Southern California for you?
In what way?
Just just being part of the scene, being acting again, teaching, just,
It's fabulous. I'm a granddad.
well, that's congratulations.
Yeah. A little over a year ago, my oldest son had a granddaughter. Never thought that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just was not in my realm of thought. But at 79, I got a grandkid, which is great.
Yeah. Are your boys nearby?
My oldest son, Luke Schwartz, who does stand-up, he's a regular at the Comedy Store.
Oh, Luke Schwartz.
Yeah.
That name sounds super familiar.
I hope so. Yeah, he's funny.
Mm-hmm.
He's funny. He's tough, and he's funny. He lives in Hollywood
Mm-hmm.
with his lovely wife and little baby. And my younger son, August, he lives up in Portland, and he is an arborist,
What's an arborist?
one who works with trees.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Oh, he loves it. He loves it. We walk down. I mean, I like gardening,
Mm-hmm.
and I like cacti and stuff like that. That's just been me for a long time. And but he's like in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so wonderful to see. He's the youngest member of the Oregon Oak Society. He goes out and camps and looks for wildflowers and photographs them. Just little specific things like that. He just loves it, and I'm proud of him. He also sings once in a while. He's got a deep voice.
Mm-hmm.
Got a group called the Log Hog.
See, there you go, right? He's following in your footsteps a little bit.
They don't get paid, but they have fun.
That's also part of it.
Yeah. So he lives up there, and I get to visit him once in a while, see him. I wish I could see him more.
Yeah.
That's the part I miss.
Yeah.
I'm
Having them close by.
not having have them near vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
Luke's, but he's got a family, and it's on a good day, it's only 25 minutes away.
No, but stand-up comedy is a grind, man. Like, they're traveling all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's taken time off from traveling. He doesn't travel. But when he graduated college, he went to my wife's alma mater, State University of New York, SUNY Purchase. And he was an art history major. And when he graduated, he said, I'm going to be a comedian. And I said, well, that's the first joke.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because you just graduated as an art history student.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are you going to do is that anyway? So he moved to New York, and he did the hard thing, He he worked some day jobs. He would go into the city and work at a comedy club, but he'd have to sell tickets in Times Square, busking.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd have to sell 2 tickets, then run back and do the 7:30 show, run back to the Times Square, try and sell 2 more tickets at least, get the 9 o'clock, these are weekends, and then you can do the same for the 11 o'clock show.
Isn't that ruthless that they make you sell tickets to your own shows?
Well, we all do it.
Yeah.
Actors do that.
Yeah.
Until there was the equity waiver. There used to be equity waiver in theater, and we were happy to work,
Mm-hmm.
happy to be on stage because we knew we needed to do that. I'm thrilled that actors get paid now for small theater.
Yeah.
But we just had to, grit it out and do your job, and then come and work and tar the roof. I had to tar the roof on Vine Street.
To get by.
Yeah, not to help the theater.
Oh, really? You tarred the roof of the theater. Oh, I thought that was one of your New York jobs.
No, New York. No, I didn't do it. No. Luckily.
So what do you have coming up in the next kind of 6 months? What's on the horizon for you? What's your
A little more wanderlust.
Yeah?
My wife
Gonna travel again?
planning a trip to Japan.
Oh, back to the original destination that set all this off.
Yeah. Now, I'm a sumo fan.
Okay. Well, who isn't? That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I first went there, I had these 2 wonderful friends. They were a brother and the wife of a girlfriend I had here. And they introduced me, and stayed with them. And he worked for the DOD, but they lived totally Japanese in a suburb. They didn't live in the compound or anything. and they had tatami, which are the mats, and they had a nice ofuro, nice bath. They really lived it, and they turned me on to a reasonable vocabulary, and they just turned me on all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'd gotten into sushi, but not this kind.
Yeah.
You know, and they just took me around and stuff. And one of the things we did was go to sumo, and I went,
That guy's the same size as my SUV.
that guy's bigger.
Yeah.
But it was the ritual just captured, and the colors and the smell and the sound and the whole arena and all those people. And I got pretty into it. I mean, I think I got to go to two, one basho, two different times. And then I subscribed to Sumo magazine.
Okay, wow.
Two of them. And they had no English, but they had color pictures, and then they had black and white pictures, and then tons of writing, and I had stacks of them, but I'd finally.
You were the only subscriber to Sumo magazine in the LA County?
Yeah, no, only one who couldn't read. And we had a great time. One time they came, so I had a lot of friends who were artists, and I knew the scene pretty well, and there was a wonderful man and woman named Stanley and Elise Grinstein. Stanley had co-founded Gemini GEL, which is a world quality famous print shop here. He worked in the industrial business, but this was his side gig. And he was a wonderful collector, and he used to have parties, and he knew everybody, and so I got to be friends with him. And one day there was a tournament here in LA, and I said, "Hey, why don't we go down? Why don't you come with me? We'll go to the see the tournament." It was a 2-day tournament. They do that all year long, pay the bills. They do 6 major tournaments, one every other month in Japan. So he said, "Tell you what, let's have a party, and you invite them." So I took this artist, young woman, Sandy Sussman. I took her down to, I found out where a bank, maybe like East West Bank or something like that, a Japanese bank, was having a kind of like an honor dinner for these guys. And they had small tables with a sekitori at each table. And we actually sat at a table with a future grand champion. But so I went around and I said, "Hey, want to go to a party?
You're in Hollywood. You want to go to a Hollywood party, baby?"
Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I got 4 of them to come.
That's impressive.
Stanley sent limos.
Yeah, how do you get a sumo wrestler in an Uber?
There were no. This was back.
Or a yellow taxi.
This was 70s. Yeah. No. And so he brought him out. I mean, this was a Hollywood party. People showed, not just the artists. Actors showed, celebs, everything. It was so much fun. These guys get on the dance floor and they bump. They do the bump. It was great. One guy who was a wonderful guy wanted to get high.
Oh, really? That doesn't happen in LA.
That doesn't happen in Tokyo. And so somebody took him and got him high. And he got sick. He threw up. He didn't do well in the tournament the next day.
Poor guy.
But he was such a good guy, and he was handsome and personable. They were all really we had such a good time. So then I saw him in 72. I got to see him again twice. And then I saw him here in LA twice. And now in Fukuoka, I'm going to see him again for 2 days.
And you're bringing your wife?
She's going to one.
Okay, but she's never been to Japan before?
No.
Oh, that'll be wild, right?
Yeah.
One of my best buddies got married in Japan a few years ago, many years ago actually, and I had an amazing time. We started off in like Tokyo, went to Nagano, and then I think the wedding ceremony is in Kyoto. So it's like just see like the best parts of Japan in that little trip.
It's interesting saying that those are the best known parts.
Yeah, Kyoto's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to what is ostensibly now what Kyoto used to be. It's called Kanazawa.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going over, spend a few nights there for the same reasons that you go to Kyoto. Kyoto is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go to Kanazawa, we're going to go to Kyoto, we're going to go to Hiroshima,
Mm-hmm.
we'll go to Nara for a day, we're going to go to Beppu, and then we're going to go to Miyajima, which is in Hiroshima, and we're going to go south to Fukuoka. We're going to go into some places that don't really get much traffic,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to eat like Peking.
It's the best, isn't it? The food there is the best.
Unbelievable.
Mm.
Yeah. So my wife has been phenomenal. We don't use a travel agent,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not going with a group.
That's the best. Hey, just go by yourself.
I mean, the way I used to go was, hey, let's go, and oh, what's this? But we're older, and
You have to have an itinerary.
it helps to have an itinerary. It helps to have a bed.
Yeah. Booking hotels in advance.
Yeah, and restaurants now you have to book in advance. And we're going to go to some onsen, which are
The spas.
springs.
Yeah, the hot springs. Yeah.
Yeah, natural.
Those are the best. Have you been to one of the ones where everyone's like sits on the little bucket and there's just guys all next to each other and you just sit there and you just clean yourself in the
Well, you have to do that first. You have to clean yourself.
Yeah, I've been there, yeah.
Yeah. On the first trip, I took a train from Tokyo up through Niigata. No, Niigata's up in the north. Through a beautiful area, Nikko.
Hmm.
And then I went up, and I'm taking the train going up towards the northwest, towards Sendai, which
Oh, I know Sendai.
Sendai Machima, those little islands out in. So I was going up there
There's one of those islands that the Chinese is fighting with the Japanese on who owns it, I think.
in a different part of town, right?
I hope so.
And these are close to the shore.
Hmm.
And so I was on the train, and this is 1969, 24 years after the end of the war, and I had this mustache, and I maybe have had a earring, and the workers would get on in their cotton work clothes, and they were going to go home. And so we're riding on this train, and it's pretty rural, very rural. And all of a sudden, they all stand up, and they start, and the windows had been down. They're like old windows you had in a bus or in a train. And so they lift them all up, and I'm going, what's going on? And so this person, I don't remember, so I lifted mine up, and we go through a tunnel, and we come out, and then they lowered the windows because it was a coal train, and they didn't want the smoke in the car in the tunnel. I had no idea. I was so naive.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're so in tune with all of that.
Well, they have to be, but I mean, a coal train.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about the great sax player. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it was just, that's another one of those moments where I go, oh, another world.
Mm-hmm.
Another world. You must love that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, what is it? That's like, I feel like we're all different versions of ourselves depending on which setting we're in, right? Like when you're with your wife, you're a certain version of you. When you're with your kids, you're a certain version of you. When you're acting, but when you're traveling, you're also a certain version of yourself. And I always fell in love with that version of myself.
Oh, nice.
Because I feel like when I'm traveling, when I'm learning, when I'm absorbing, when I'm breaking bread with people, there's a little bit more humility in my heart. There's a little bit more empathy in my heart.
Absolutely.
And of course, like that adrenaline you get when you're constantly learning and expanding your own horizons is completely addictive.
And there's something to be said for that loneliness.
Yeah, it's the best.
You learn a lot about who you are and what, I mean, I've traveled alone. You had your brother a lot of the time.
On the motorcycle trips, yeah. But then we made another show called Extreme Treks where I was like walking across deserts and climbing mountains and stuff, as you do. And it was those trips I really liked a lot because, spending time in nature, offline, kind of alone is is something that people don't afford themselves anymore.
Yeah, my son up in Portland, who goes out and he'll camp out and just be out there, in the rain. Yeah.
Magic. Bring it. Well, I got to get your sons on the podcast because they sound like very interesting young versions of you.
Yeah, they're totally different.
Yeah,
thank God.
But
they're both enlightened in a way I would have liked to have been.
Yeah, but both doing such different things. It's amazing. Like one following kind of your footsteps in show business and being an entertainer.
Yeah, I was dumbfounded.
We'll have to try to link them up with you afterwards. Anything else you wanted to chat about? Are you good?
Let's see.
Yeah.
What else?
Anything else we can pontificate about this afternoon?
This afternoon. What else?
Whoa.
Political? No.
No. God, no.
No.
The debate last night?
No.
No. I'm Canadian. I can't vote.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm so God. I don't have any skin in this game.
Talk to your friends.
Yeah.
Help things along.
Well, I was in Montana a few weeks ago, and then I was in Jackson recently as well. And someone came up to me, it's like, "Where are you going to go for the election?" And I'm like, "I think I'll just be in LA." And they're like, "No, you got to leave the country."
When I was in the Philippines, it was during an election, and my friends said, "Don't go out of your hotel tonight."
Yeah,
it was Marcos and somebody else. And I thought it was a fairly, I was shocked. I went up to I didn't, go out that night.
Mm-hmm.
I took their advice, but I went up to a mountain town called Baguio, and I'm walking around, I'm by myself, and I see these two pretty good sized guys, not Philippine size, but big Philippine size, kind of in semi fatiguey kind of stuff.
Pseudo military
but not matching.
Mm-hmm.
They both had big ass guns, and so I'm walking along, and I went, I might have said Mabuhay or something like that, and they both went, nothing.
Yeah,
nothing, not a sound, and I went, whoa,
get back to your hotel, foreigner.
Yeah. Get out of town, pal. Yeah.
Not elections in foreign countries are terrifying. I was filming in Kyrgyzstan once in Bishkek, where they were having like a civil war in Bishkek while we were trying to film there, because the someone else won the
Bishkek.
It's the capital of Kyrgyzstan, which used to be part of the Soviet Union.
Yes, I
know. But it was kind of just north of Afghanistan and kind of a little bit west of China, and we were filming there, and
Iran too.
North of Iran, yeah. And but we were filming there, and there was an election, I guess, a few days before we arrived, and then someone else won, and then the incumbent wouldn't leave office and wouldn't leave the presidential power, and then they rallied up like in the city like 10 or 15,000 people, and then they marched out to where the president, and there was like shooting in the air, and we were at the Hyatt hotel, and everyone at the Hyatt was like, "Don't worry, just don't leave the Hyatt, you'll be fine." Like, but you're sitting there at the bar watching the TV of the riots, drinking, and you can hear the gunshots outside. Wow. Yeah, it was insane.
Sounds kind of like it could never happen here.
It could never happen here,
right?
Yeah. No, there's a lot that can happen here. It's batshit crazy most days.
You've done some hardcore traveling.
I've seen
done
some stuff.
Lightcore.
Your stuff in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iran and Turkey.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
But Iran, I was only in Turkey a little bit. Iran was interesting. I saw the crown jewels, Persia, when I was in Tehran in 1972. Someone said, there's a thing called the Peacock Throne. And it's this jewel-encrusted throne. It's not like a square throne like we have, but more round, with things coming off it, kind of like a peacock.
That's wild.
So you go to we went to this bank and go downstairs in a vault in a bank on a main street. And there's this room, 3 glass cabinet, I guess, all glass. And looking around, there are trays of jewels.
That's amazing.
It was like Aladdin's lamp. It was like Alibaba. It was like anything. And one thing I remember, so it took me by surprise, was, you know what a rope and tassel looks like? You know, they're rope, they're big, thick ropes, and then they come down with tassels hanging on each end.
Mm-hmm.
They had a huge, going 3 around all the windows, a rope, tassels, pearls.
Oh, shit. Wow.
I went, I went, what? And so they had made strands and strands of pearls and made them into a rope.
That's incredible.
And made the rope, and it was thick. I'm talking, what's that? 8 inches? 10 inches?
Inches, yeah. That's a lot.
It was thick. The tassels were huge. And then the Peacock Throne was there, which is amazing. And plates of uncut emeralds. Just, you know.
Have you ever been to the Tower of London and seen the crown's jewels?
I think I have,
Yeah.
but they didn't strike me this way.
No, I mean, it sounds maybe a little bit more organized in London, but
Much
but
more.
to have just jewels kind of flowing everywhere sounds pretty wild.
Yeah, they had a huger coffer in England. This was just Persia, just Persia.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows how old some of that. I mean, there were knives, curved knives in jeweled scabbards with jeweled handles. Just like when you're a kid, you see them in a comic book, it was stunning. It was stunning.
And 1972 Iran.
Yeah. And the girls could wear miniskirts.
Back in the day, yeah. Different place, different time.
They were looking good, too.
I got a story. My first time to Iran, I think it was 2002, and I was in Turkmenistan.
Oh, you came down.
What's
that?
This was 2002.
Oh.
Yeah. So I went from Hong Kong to Istanbul overland.
Oh.
So that was my journey. So I took and it was all just trains and buses.
Right.
So I crossed the border from Hong Kong into China, went all through Xinjiang, Uyghur area to Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. And then I crossed the land border with Turkmenistan into Mashhad, which is how I know where Mashhad is. I took the train to Tehran. Then I went down to Isfahan, Shiraz. Then I went to like Bandar Abbas down in the south. But then I went to the Bam Citadel, which is...
I'd love to have gone there.
Yeah, because they had an earthquake like in 2008 or 9, and it got destroyed. Or maybe 6 or 7, I can't remember.
Yeah, they got ruins in Persia that are...
Persepolis, which is just outside Shiraz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then I went back up to Tehran, then I went to like Kazvin, and then I went to the Valley of the Assassins, and then I went up into Azerbaijan, I went to Baku, and then I went all the way up into Georgia, into Tbilisi, and then I went over to Batumi, and then came into Turkey, and then I traveled all through Turkey, and then ended up in Istanbul.
Canadian passport.
Yeah. Helpful. Helpful. But I love that part of the world.
Yeah. The weavings in the Baluchistan, Uzbek, their weavings of carpets and their jewelry, the silver crafted with cornelians, and oh man, that stuff's just magical.
Yeah, Uzbekistan has Bukhara, Samarkand, and I even took the bus all the way out to Khiva, and it's this beautiful little jeweled town out in the middle of nowhere near the border with Kazakhstan, out near the Aral Sea, which is a Dead Sea, right?
It's a crossword word.
But
I remember reading about it growing up.
But to see it was incredible, and to see all these ships stuck in the sand after all the water, yeah, it's a trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was Genghis Khan around that area?
Yeah, that is like Genghis Khan. Like, so, well, I mean, originally in Mongolia, right? But then they really dominated Central Asia.
Oh, I know. Yeah, so did the Persians. They went all the way into India. And it's interesting, when I was in Afghanistan, I remember some guy saying, I was talking about the British conquering and stuff, and they went, nobody has ever conquered us. Nobody.
Proudly.
And, and then the Russians invaded, and I told people, they said that they would, and they could. I mean, and we certainly failed.
Oh, that was ugly.
Yeah. It's an interesting, proud society. That's that grouping, all the stands, all the stands are one kind of a grouping of people that I think are very fierce.
Incredibly fierce. And actually it's a really multicultural area too, because you have Uyghur looking people who look like Western China. Then you've got like the hardcore kind of
Now, what does that mean? What Western China look?
So the people who live in Western China are Uyghur people. So they're like a minority of China.
Are they less color skin? Are their eyes different? Are their structures?
Well, they look exactly like local people would be in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan and Turkmenistan. And yeah, so like
it's that mix.
Well, yeah, because like the Kurds of the Middle East, right? Like there's some of them in India, or some of them in Turkey, some of them in Iran, some of them in Iraq,
Turkey,
right?
Were
southern Turkey, but they don't have their own home,
right?
So the Uyghur people in northwest China, it's a little bit similar. The culture expands into Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and stuff, but they don't have their own home. So it's a kind of a cultural group that's been divided up by other masters, so to speak. So when people talk about the Kurds, you can also kind of talk about the Uyghurs, because their ethnicity has expanded past the borders of modern man.
Right, yeah. Right. That's kind of how I feel that whole area, and I know that from the weavings.
Yeah,
because you can see. They say, well, that's a Baluchi rug, or that's but I mean, Persian obviously has their own total different style, but those others, they kind of, blend in. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, and they're so intense.
Yeah. I really so I'm planning hopefully in 2025 to go back to Tajikistan to climb Lenin Peak. So it's a 7,000 meter peak. So it's at like 24,000 feet.
Is this named after Vladimir?
Lenin, yeah. And yeah, so I want to go back there because it's one of the highest peaks in that region. It's not that hard to climb. Like, it's not that technical. Like K2 is the big one in that area of the world, but it's deadly. So
that's where K2 is.
Yeah. Yeah. K2 is a little bit more on the Pakistani-Chinese border.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I never climb.
No. It's fun though, sometimes.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, you meet climbers, they're just a different breed.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's people who climb, and then there's people who walk up mountains that are big. So I'm kind of like in the group. I walk up mountains that are big. So like Everest is a walk up. Most big mountains in the world, you don't need a lot of technical climbing skill. You just need to be able to withstand
oxygen.
Oxygen and the temperature and the difficulty of operating at altitude, right? But most, like, there's these famous 7 mountains on 7 different continents. Most of them are just a walk up.
That's interesting. My friend, but it's important to do for some people. My friend John Ruskin, the
theater
artistic director of the school and the theater, he said he loves mountain climbing, and he said that there was a man who summited with his son, and it was very difficult, and it was hard to get to, and all that. I mean, because it's a walk up, but it ain't an easy stroll in the park. And he worked at it, and they were stormed in, and and all that stuff happened. And then he came back, and 2 weeks later, he was hit by a truck, killed. So the moral is, climb your fucking mountain, man.
Get it done when you can.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really inspirational for life.
Yeah, man. Yeah, because like, it's crazy because you can go out and do these crazy things all around the world and then just get hit by a car and like around the block of your house. It makes no sense.
Yeah. It looks like you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, COVID was a bit of a break. Yeah, because international travel was kind of just completely destroyed during that.
Completely destroyed.
Well, look at this. Like, so in 2019, I filmed 10 episodes of a television series in 10 different countries. So we did 10 expeditions in 10 countries in 10 months, and we were 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And then in those 2 weeks off, I did 42 speaking events kind of all around the world. So that was like peak me. So I was living in Dubai, and I was traveling every day. Like, it was insane, but it was amazing. I was super happy. I love meeting all these people. I love filming. My guys and my crew were the best in the world.
Are they from Dubai?
No. My director of photography, Chad Ingram, he's from Canada, but I met him in China. He was a longtime China guy too, and we kind of got into the television business together. And then my second cameraman, Jesse, he's from the Bay Area. And then I had a third cameraman, Daniel. He's from Amsterdam.
So crew is just the cameraman.
Yeah, and then I had my own editing team and my post-production team, which I managed as well.
Somewhere else.
One was in New Zealand, one was here in LA. So we were global. We were all kind of just working as much as we could.
Full time.
Yeah, but we were rolling. So when COVID hit, all of that just stopped. Yeah,
Everything stopped.
and then I'm kind of going through a similar phase that you went through, where getting back into it and getting the network back up again, because everyone's in different jobs now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the tastes of what people seem to want are changing a little bit as well.
I found COVID to be less onerous for me. I didn't get COVID until this past year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, first time. I was very careful and, knock on wood, lucky.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it to be a time where my wife and I could get to know each other better, even better, and how much was important there and how wasn't. The other thing in LA was driving on the freeway. It was like, get out of here.
Empty.
Oh, it was heaven. It was like the old days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, actually, the old days were never that good. But it was a lot like that, you know, and we could hear birds. We could hear birds. You know, we didn't hear the freeway ever. It was like, oh,
There's nature.
there's nature in LA, which is heaven.
I like living in this neighborhood a lot. It's pretty quiet. Yeah.
This neighborhood has gone through a million changes since I lived.
Yeah. Just, walking down Santa Monica on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon is something you have to be ready for.
Yeah.
mentally and emotionally. But this little pocket just a little bit north is quite quiet.
It's all great. You know, I just, it was always my locus. It's where I could, get places all over. I mean, I'm.
It is very central, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Laurel Canyon I consider to be part of West.
Oh, yeah, it's just down the street, yeah. Like tomorrow night I'm going to an event at the Pacific Design Center, which is like literally across the street.
Just down the street.
It's amazing how I literally live my life in LA in like
in this neighborhood,
12 square blocks. Yeah.
There are people living there are people who live on the west side who don't want to go east of the freeway.
I know, they write me all the time rejecting offers to come onto my podcast.
Really? They're idiots.
They asked me for a Zoom call. I was like, no, like I really, when I came to LA and I wanted to do a podcast, I wanted to meet people. I wanted to have like a real connection face to face.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm stunned by that. Mm-hmm. Now I understand the traffic. We try not to go east on a Friday night.
Fair enough.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
But other times, I mean, there's so much. This is such a varied culture here. It's so great. The food. Mm-hmm. It's beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
It's true.
It's fabulous. I mean, you can get pretty, probably close to real Chinese food out in the valley, San Gabriel Valley. Mm-hmm. You go out there?
No, not that often. But the quality of the food, any ethnicity, the food here is amazing. Especially like down in Koreatown. Yeah. I mean, I lived in China for many years, so Korean food was pretty dominant there as well.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fairly dominant in Japan, I understand.
Yeah. And good Japanese food, too. You just have to walk along Sunset. Everything's on Sunset. Sunset's easy. Santa Monica's kind of crazy, but Sunset's like just all the restaurants there are beautiful.
Yeah. When people come here, I take them. I say, let's just go on this journey. Hmm. And I either start in the west or the east, and I start at Sunset downtown or at the coast. But I like to go up through LA, mm-hmm. right? And then along through Hollywood, down the Sunset Strip, then through Beverly Hills into Bel Air and then over the freeway, and then into these luxurious hill homes
Yeah.
and stuff, and then you open up into this beautiful ocean.
Yeah. Pacific Palisades and Brentwood and all that. Yeah. And then Malibu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the boo.
Yeah. I got to get out to the West Coast a little more.
You should learn to you should learn to boogie board.
I learned how to surf many years ago, and that was pretty good. And but less.
Boogie board's easy. If it hits you, it doesn't hurt as much.
That's true, for sure.
When I learned to surf, they didn't have leashes.
Oh.
So we'd in San Diego, I go to La Jolla Shores, and we'd paddle out. And my first board was wood. It was balsa wood. It was heavy. And we'd paddle out, and if you lost the wave, you have to swim in and paddle back out. I was very buff.
Mm-hmm.
But then they got the leash, and you could just go wild. And the light boards.
Yeah. So when they come back and hit you in the head, it doesn't hurt as much?
Oh, yeah, it hurts. I was thinking that because even in the soup, if you're standing there, which is the water right by the shore, if the board flips and hits you in the shin, it hurts.
Still does.
Yeah, it's just flat there. Boom.
Mm. Well, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And
It's really a pleasure to get to hang with you.
yeah, you too. And it's always great to meet new people. And I wanted to wish you the best of luck on your trip to Japan later this year with your wife. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's going to be good. And I'm looking to just keep acting and have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, look, hey, check this out. We go to this camera so people can see we're in the same room.
Hi, folks.
And now we shake it out. Wonderful to meet you. Thank you for coming on the
My
podcast.
pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you. Thanks for the time.
I wish you the best of luck.
I'm jealous of your travels.
And we fade to black.
Yep, perfect.
And we're done.
Yeah.